Chapter 1201, Archdevil Armored Shark Vicious and Domineering. These were the two words that people found most appropriate to describe this human boy. Some were truly shaken and couldn't calm down after this spectacle. This was a blatant challenge to the teeming tribe. Just how overbearing was this? Not to mention a single cultivator, even a lineage wouldn't dare to do this. But now, the human youth named Wuxia had killed tens of thousands of soldiers of the teeming Marquis. Moreover, he even ate the Marquis tendon in front of the crowd. This was too much to take in. Is he a virtuous paragon? A cultivator calmed down and shuddered. Even if he isn't a paragon, he must be a heaven's equal king. However, it was trapped by Wuxia's fingers and wouldn't budge, so her summoning was useless. Die. A cold glint flashed across Wuxia's eyes, a glint that cut straight to the heart. My master is the divine queen. She knew that the situation wasn't favorable and screamed out in order to use her backing. However, she had yet to finish speaking when the sound of something being pierced came about. The hairpin had instantly shot through her skull. A bloody hole appeared as a string of blood began to flow. Her eyes were still wide open as her body slowly fell down. Not even in her wildest dreams did she expect someone would actually dare to kill her. Junior. Her followers regained their sanity and shouted at the same time before lunging at Wuxia. Roar. The shark cried out. With a popping sound, it swallowed all of these followers in one gulp. The coral forest went quiet right away. All of the cultivators here felt pressured and glanced at each other. Not long before this, Wuxia was massacring the teeming sea tribe. Now, he even killed Gongsun Qianer. This was not only offending the teeming tribe but also the four branches of Guchun. What a domineering and arrogant showing. Dao attendant Lin and Yan Yanglong were astonished as well. This was doubly true for the attendant. His heart felt cold since he didn't expect this human junior to be so powerful. Chapter 1202, Untethered Vessel. Wuxia ignored the others and remounted the archdevil armored shark before shouting, "Go!" With that, the shark issued a roar and rushed for the bottomless trench before disappearing into its dark abyss. What does he want to do? A while later, many people calmed down and began to murmur among themselves. Yitu's and Tingjiwen's minds returned as well. It was already too late when they thought about following him. In fact, the two of them couldn't catch up to the shark's speed anyway. Yitu looked at Tingjiwen and asked, "What is this about?" Tingjiwen replied by shaking his head, "I don't know either. His actions aren't something you and me can speculate. Maybe it has something to do with the sea-crossing shuttle. We will have to wait until he returns to find out." Tingjiwen had learned about the shark from an ancient scroll from his citadel. However, he didn't truly understand the mysteries involved. Wuxia made the shark go to the deepest part of the trench. Its depth was truly of an unfathomable magnitude. Some even said that there was no bottom. Who knew where its base was located? The shark cut through the trench's waves for a long time. Crash. Eventually, it slammed into a cliff and swiftly rushed inside. At this moment, splashing sounds came about, as if the shark had just leaped out of the sea and into the sky. It entered a different space, a lonely space without stars, a sun or a moon. Only the coldness of the void existed here. Not even time was present, it was a land of eternal banishment. In this chilling space was a huge naval shuttle seemingly capable of freely crossing through the ocean. It had an ancient bronze hue, as if it was cast from plain bronze. It had been in this icy void for so long that it was covered with patina and was near the point of rusting. This gigantic shuttle had two doors to its left and right with many runes and totems on them. They were too archaic to be understood. Outside of the four doors, nothing else could be found. Alas, the ship wouldn't be particularly eye-catching if placed anywhere else. However, Wuxia was attracted by this shuttle. His gaze tightly toured over it before murmuring, "Oh, my untethered vessel. How can the world know your worth? Only those who don't understand your value would call you the sea-crossing shuttle." People in the heaven spirit world had spotted this vessel before, and not on just one occasion. These people gave it the name Sea Crossing Shuttle. The name meant that it could be used to traverse through the bottomless trench, but no one knew if this was true or not. Most of them were ordinary disciples from large and small sects alike. Some were even vagabonds, so they didn't know what this huge shuttle was. Sea Crossing Shuttle. Eventually, an old cultivator who looked like an old mortal shouted, "It is the legendary Sea Crossing Shuttle. It is here again." What is this Sea Crossing Shuttle? Other cultivators were still lost after hearing this old man. They had never heard this name before, let alone knowing what it was about. According to legend, the Sea Crossing Shuttle can reach the Charming Fragmented Realm. Charming Fragmented Realm. Dao attendant Lin and Yan Yanglong from the great lineages were astounded to hear this. They finally knew what this ship ahead was. They turned and left in order to send messages to their sects about the appearance of the shuttle. Chapter 1203. Charming Fragmented Realm. News of the shuttle's appearance quickly spread across the entire Jade Sea to the corners of the heaven spirit world. Many cultivators were moved by this information. Many great lineages sent disciples to the coral forest. They had their own speculations regarding this matter. Of course, there were some sects who had no interest in this matter and didn't send out any disciples. A sect master from a lineage that was interested in the matter murmured, "Wow, the Sea Crossing Shuttle is back. It is capable of reaching the fragmented realm and hasn't appeared for generations. What is the meaning behind this? Does this mean that some mysteries will be solved?" In a powerful lineage that didn't want to participate, an old virtuous paragon shook his head and said, "So what about the shuttle? And the same goes for the fragmented realm. It would be a fruitless trip since that place has already become mere ruins." An expert under his faction spoke, "But I heard when immortal Emperor Gu Chun was young, he went there and obtained a supreme fortune, the source of the charming spirits." Li Qie replied, "There are too many things people don't know in this world." Yi Tu glanced at the shuttle and asked, "Where do they lead?" "They have never been opened." Li Qie slowly spoke, "As for their destinations, who knows? The world will find out once they open. Of course, that day might never come." Li Qie knew full well that it wasn't easy to open the other 3 doors of the shuttle. In fact, when the time was ripe, they would open by themselves. However, everything would change when that day comes. Li Qie spoke, "Come, let us enter. After finding what I need, I will still have to see your ancestral whale." After hearing this, the duo was quite moved because the whale of the void imperfection 3 schools was too mysterious and full of legends. However, few had seen it. At the very least, they were not qualified to see it. The 2 of them followed him into the portal. A world unraveled before them. It was a fragmented world full of questions. Here, the mountains were either shattered or torn asunder. The earth was split by shocking scars everywhere. Even the oceans here had boiled into deserts. Up in the sky, gigantic peaks had been pulled down by universal laws. Enormous stars from up above fell onto the ground. From these individual scenes, one could imagine the horrifying events that transpired here. It could have been a natural disaster or a heaven-shattering war. Chapter 1204. The world beneath the creek. In this broken realm, Ting Jiwen and Yi Tu had different feelings. They couldn't explain it clearly, but they felt that they were overwhelmed with indescribable emotions. It was difficult to point out whether this was a happy or sad emotion amidst their confusion. This was especially true for Yi Tu. This sentiment continued to linger within him. "It is affecting your instincts," Li Qie explained while the 2 were still uncertain. He then looked at Yi Tu and said, "You are a charming spirit, so this is even more intense for you." Yi Tu had to ask, "Is this place really related to our race?" Though this was his first visit here, he had heard his seniors talking about it before. Their wise sages had made a prediction. Because of this, experts from their race had entered this place many times throughout history. Even their void imperfect 3 schools had explored this place, but all left without great results. Li Qie maintained his mysterious smile instead of giving an answer. He looked at the horizon and said, "Let's go, there is a place we must reach." With that, he took the first step forward. The two boys quickly gave chase. The group took their time. Along their journey, many people from all over the world could be seen entering the realm. The majority of the cultivators here were eager to find treasures or fortunes among the ruins. Because of this, people were digging deep into the ground or using their divine intents to sweep through the mountains and rivers. Some were climbing to higher places while others drilled into the earth in their search. Because of the legend of immortal Emperor Gu Chun, knowing that nothing might come of this trip didn't deter people's enthusiasm and interest. Everyone dreamed of becoming the second immortal Emperor Gu Chun. Cultivators dug one mountain after another and plowed the land to no avail. They didn't find anything at all, let alone a great fortune. One of them complained, "The charming fragmented realm is truly a wasteland, there is nothing here. How could it be so easy to find a great fortune? It wouldn't be called a fortune if it was easily found." His friend smiled and comforted him, "You know, since the start of time, how many people were like immortal Emperor Gu Chun? He was the only one. The first emperor of the 9 worlds. The first immortal emperor. If his fortune came so easily, he wouldn't have been the first emperor." After hearing his friend, the cultivator regained his spirits and continued to look for fortunes and treasures. The legend was a great moving force for these adventurers. They continued to look over and over again without giving up. In their minds was the image of the first emperor of the 9 worlds, the pride of the charming spirits, immortal Emperor Gu Chun. After seeing the fruitless searches of the other cultivators, Yi Tu asked Li Qie, "Is this a forsaken land? Did it used to hide a great secret?" Although Li Qie had mentioned his progenitor's success at finding a supreme treasures in this place, the later generations had never heard of someone else who found something, not even a piece of scrap metal. Who says a secret realm must have treasures and fortunes? Li Qie looked at the youth and smilingly replied, "Must the forefathers bury treasures or leave behind fortunes in this place so that the future generations can come to find them? But immortal Emperor Gu Chun really did receive a fortune in this place." Yi Tu hesitated a bit before replying. Li Qie laughed in response, "Because he is immortal Emperor Gu Chun." It's just as these people have been repeating, how many were similar to him since the start of time? Nobody, since only one could become the first emperor. Having said that, he pointed at this head and continued, "In this place, items, treasures, and even fortunes, none of these matter. The crucial part is here. If you can understand, you will have a harvest. If you can't, then there is nothing worth remembering in this place. It will be a wasteland like the people say." Yi Tu interjected, "Young noble, our progenitor found something here as well. Why is it that immortal Emperor Wu Go could find something but others can't?" Li Qie smiled, "This place is different from the other locations, including the 12 burial grounds. The burial grounds are places with buried treasures, but it would be a huge mistake to use that logic here." Ting Jiwen asked, "How is this place different from the others?" Li Qie pondered for a moment with a forlorn gaze before answering insipidly, "In a distant age, it supported an entire race. And it's not just this land, the shuttle that you both call the Sea Crossing Shuttle is included as well. It signified endless hope." "Endless hope?" Ting Jiwen murmured. This casual sentence from Li Qie left him with an everlasting aftertaste. "If you can understand this, then you will become the second immortal Emperor Gu Chun." Li Qie looked at Ting Jiwen, who was trying to make sense of this. Ting Jiwen coughed and said, "Sir, you are messing with me. I am a treant, so I can't become an immortal emperor." Li Qie laughed and replied, "You are right, but understanding the meaning of this place will grant you a lifetime of benefits even if you are a treant." The youth shook his head, "Sir, you think too highly of me. As everyone said before, immortal Emperor Gu Chun is unique. As for me, even though my talents aren't bad, I am only an insect compared to the emperor's. I know my own worth very well." Ting Jiwen was telling the truth. As the successor of the Heaven Vine Citadel, his talents weren't bad at all. He wasn't looking down on himself either, it was just that he knew he was far from being comparable to the emperors. The group walked for a long time before they reached a waterfall. It was pouring down from a cliff so high that it seemed to be falling from the sky. Its current flowed along the terrain, but its stream was divided into several smaller creeks even over yonder. Li Chia picked a creek and waded into the water with the two youths. The next second, they sank to the bottom. At this time, he took out a sea clam, the one that he caught at the bottomless trench. He threw it into the creek and said, "Go, you can find your way home by yourself." Afterwards, he turned towards the duo and warned, "Follow my footsteps closely, do not make the slightest mistake." His serious expression made the boys shudder. They didn't dare to be careless and quickly nodded. The clam began to move while wiggling at the bottom of the creek. The pearl within emitted a golden light as if it was guiding the way. It left behind a faint trace of light. Li Chia followed it step by step in a very meticulous manner. He knew that one misstep would ruin all of his efforts and that he would have to start all over again. The duo behind Li Chia was even more careful. They nervously followed right behind Li Chia and stepped on his footprints without daring to be careless. At first, they felt that there was nothing special here. The current of the creek continued to flow with fishes and shrimps swimming about. However, they suddenly realized that the space around them was a mirage. Suddenly this was an ancient path, no longer the simple path of the creek. This path led all the way to the sky. They walked upward as if this was a process to ascend to deityhood. However, they saw some terrifying scenes. In this space, they saw unbelievably gigantic warships. They hovered in space like stars and each of them could carry continents spanning millions and millions of miles. Such warships had been destroyed. Some were split in two while others had huge holes that went straight through them. Others had uneven gaps while more were shattered nearly to the point of being unrecognizable. Amidst their days, they saw countless fragments floating in space. The fragments were bits of cracked sabers, broken swords, and fragmented axes. Furthermore, they saw skeletons. Some of the skeletons were enormous, as if they were huge monsters that still had a golden glow to them. Chapter 1205, Mysterious Statue. The duo was jolted after seeing all of these spectacles. They couldn't tell reality from illusion or even if they were actually in this strange place or not. Stabilize your mind or you will never be able to come back. Suddenly, Li Chia's voice rang in their minds like a wake-up call. Their lucidity returned as they sobered up. They found that they were still down in the creek. The current was still quietly flowing along with the little creatures swimming about as if nothing had changed. The three continued on this path for an unknown period of time. Eventually, Li Chia led them out of the creek. A gentle breeze brushed by and startled them. They found themselves on a flat plain, but just like before, they couldn't determine if this place was real or not. Fortunately, they didn't go too far before walking to a pile of rubble. Countless bits of gravel were scattered on the ground, but upon careful observation, they turned out to be pieces of stone statues. The rubble was quite sizable. As they went on deeper into the plain, the two looked at some of the broken statues. They had been destroyed beyond repair. There was simply no way of knowing what they used to look like. The two had a hard time imagining what had actually happened here in the past. Eventually, they reached the inner part of these ruins and found a complete statue. It was quite tall, more than 10 meters high. It had stood strong for countless eras, but these eras left their mark on it. Under the polishing of the years, it had become a bit gray. Its slender contours and elegant clothing indicated that this was a statue of a woman. However, the facial features of the statue had grown blurry under the polishing of countless years. There was no way to see through its facial features. Such a statue resembled something carved out of snow, slowly melting away with the passing of time. The vague lines and contours of the statue caused the woman's face to remain a mystery. The duo gazed at it carefully. They didn't know whether the statue was initially like this or if it had been weathered by time, or if something else had happened to it. Li Chia stood before the statue without speaking. He stared at it in a daze, not blinking for a long time. The other two couldn't figure out what was so captivating about the statue or why Li Qie was so fascinated by it. Nevertheless, they didn't dare to disturb him. After a long time, Li Qie turned around and asked, "Are you two all right?" The two were surprised and wryly chuckled in their minds. They should be the ones asking Li Qie this. It was Li Qie who stood there looking at the statue in a daze, not them. Yi Tu shook his head and replied, "I'm fine." Li Qie smiled a little while looking at Tu without saying anything. Ting Jiwen asked, "Sir, earlier, was it real or fake?" "What are you referring to?" Li Qie clarified. Ting Jiwen found that Li Qie's response was quite strange, as if they had incongruous viewpoints. "The things we saw in the creek earlier." He elaborated despite his slight confusion. Li Qie looked at him and replied, "Whether the images are real or fake depends on your Tao heart. Real is fake and fake is real, false is also true and true is also false." After hearing this, both the youths were lost in the fog and scratched their heads like confused monks. Li Qie paid no mind to the two and took out a jade bowl. He whispered to it and performed a complex and strange ritual. It was a very ancient rite with a purpose unknown to even Ting Jiwen. He whispered for a bit and the ceremony ended with him raising the jade bowl over his head. At this time, one could hear the splashing of water. Two very small streams of water fell down from above, into his bowl. Yi Tu murmured, "The statue is crying." The two of them looked up to see tears coming out of the statue. They were quite moved and stood there in a daze. They suddenly saw an illusion of the statue being alive. At this point, it was not something made out of stone or marble, it was a living being sealed in this location. At this point, they could no longer tell the nature of this statue before them. Once Li Qie's bowl was filled, the tears stopped and Li Qie carefully put it away. Yi Tu curiously asked, "Young noble, what is that?" Li Qie looked at the statue and said, "Mortal tears, the tears of compassion and pity for the common people. It can stimulate someone's desire for life." Li Qie came for this bowl of tears in order to replenish the peacock tree's life. He glanced at the statue and said, "Let's go. We have obtained what we needed, there's no point in insisting on something we can't obtain." With that, he turned and left with the duo trailing behind him. They exited the heap of rubble. "What a shame." Li Qie spoke from the lead, "I thought the two of you would be able to see something after coming here or at least obtain a little fortune. It seems like this was not meant to be." "A fortune?" Both of them were surprised. They thought he only came for the mortal tears. "Yes, a kind of opportunity." Li Qie explained, "If you two were fated, then you would have been able to see something, especially about these statues. Alas, there were no such visions. This means that it was not predestined." Their eyes darted to each other. At this time, they realized why Li Qie was being so abstruse earlier. After realizing this, the two quickly turned around. However, the ruins were no more and even the flat plain was gone. There was only a vast emptiness. This sudden development badly frightened the two. From start to finish, they didn't know that they were standing in the void. They couldn't believe their own eyes at this moment. "Don't look, one can't force a missed opportunity," Li Qie flatly said while walking in front. The two felt regretful after hearing this. They didn't know that they had given up an opportunity, one that was skirting next to them. Yi Tu couldn't help but ask, "Are there any other fortunes and opportunities here?" "It is different for everyone, so what they meet is different as well. There is no way of forcing this matter. Your inability to see the fortune means that you haven't reached the necessary level." He turned to look at Yi Tu. "However, in this place, there is a higher number of opportunities for the charming spirits." After hearing this, Yi Tu suddenly connected the dots and blurted out, "Young noble, are you saying that the young immortal Emperor Gu Chun also came to this place?" Li Qie only smiled without replying. The two were lamenting. After all, they had missed a once-in-lifetime opportunity. Li Qie spoke, "There's no need to feel bad, it isn't something that can be forced. Not everyone can become immortal Emperor Gu Chun, there is nothing you can do about it. The two of them could only sigh. Li Qie had already shown great kindness by taking the two of them here. It was their own lack of ability that made them miss this chance. Jiwen, I have taught you what I can, so I have done enough for your citadel and that old geezer Sunflower. Li Qie continued, but as for Yi Tu, since you have been helping me out and took the time to come here, I will help you obtain something. After hearing this, Yi Tu hurriedly answered, to assist young noble is what I should do. If I dared to neglect my duty, the schoolmaster would have broken my bones. How could I dare to seek something from you? Li Qie gently waved his hand and said, every cause has an effect, I will not let people who help me do so for nothing. It would be foolish to not take readily available treasures, I am only presenting Buddha with borrowed flowers, that's all. Yi Tu had no response to this and only scratched his head. Ting Jiwen, on the other hand, had nothing to say. He didn't think that Li Qie was being unfair. What Li Qie had passed down to him was more than enough for a lifetime. Chapter 1206, Divine Well. The sea-crossing shuttle traveled along the bottomless trench. It slowly floated to the surface but then descended once again, as if it was very slowly returning to the trench. It looked like there was a force down there that was connected to the shuttle, not allowing it to leave the ocean or deviate from its route. In the last several days, many experts from the great powers ran here. After entering the fragmented realm, they rarely showed themselves again. This was especially true for lineages from the charming spirit race, such as the Void Imperfection 3 schools. They weren't here for treasures or some intangible and elusive fortunes of legend, their goal was to unravel the mystery. Thus, these experts maintained a low profile and didn't want others to know about them. Of course, there were also those who put on airs such as the teeming Crown Prince. Ever since he arrived at the Broken Realm, he arrogantly announced, the human named Li Qie, show yourself. Daring to oppose the teeming tribe? This prince will eat you alive. Many people stayed far away from the Crown Prince. They felt creeped out after hearing his desire to eat Li Qie raw. Everyone knew that in recent days, the teeming tribe had been issuing threats. The Crown Prince didn't bring an army like the others, only 10 old men. All of them were experts with human forms that emitted frightening auras. As for the prince, his blood energy was even more vigorous and powerful. For the teeming tribe, under ordinary conditions, one would be able to fully turn into a human form upon reaching the heavenly sovereign realm. Someone whispered after hearing the prince's declaration, it might be over for Li Qie. The teeming Crown Prince is here in person, this shows that the clan is very serious about this. Who would be willing to save him, a human, and offend the entire teeming tribe? The Crown Prince was very different from the teeming Marquis. Even though the Marquis was a noble of the tribe, the position of Crown Prince was much higher. He was the regal firstborn of the teeming tribe master. In the heaven spirit world, there were millions upon millions of teeming fish that made up 1,000,000 kingdoms. Of course, this number of kingdoms was greatly exaggerated, but there were at least several thousand. The tribe master had a pivotal position in the tribe. He could even command the billions of fish and thousands of kingdoms in this world. Thus, one could extrapolate the Crown Prince's great status. Today, when he personally took action for revenge, it truly showed their race's stance on this matter. Moreover, the prince himself was not a useless person. Rumor has it that he was already a virtuous paragon. He was quite renowned in this world. Some said that he might be weaker than the supreme geniuses such as the profound God Monarch or the Sea-Shield Heavenly Prince, but his reputation was still immense. Thus, everyone knew that this human junior named Li Qie was dead for sure after hearing the prince's desire. Moreover, it would be a very ugly death. There were a lot of people in a certain location within the Broken Realm. Some stayed for a long time, unwilling to leave. Among them were many experts. In fact, there was nothing particularly remarkable about this place. There was a small pit with an abandoned old well inside. Nothing was worthy of a second glance besides this well. Nevertheless, this kind of place made many reluctant to leave. Some famous experts were here as well, such as Yan Yanglong and Dao attendant Lin. Outside of these two, some older people stayed here as well. However, characters of this level were hiding their true forms. After arriving, they didn't move an inch from this place. Despite deliberately masking their identities, some people still guessed that these experts were charming spirits. Some were most likely from lineages like the Void Imperfection 3 schools. Only such lineages would pay attention to this place. This location only garnered even more interest because of this. Even though many people were full of interest towards this place, no one dared to act rashly or presumptuously due to the undercover big shots. There were rumors that this was an abandoned divine well with holy water. However, for some unknown reason, the well dried up and the water disappeared. In spite of this, each time the shuttle appeared, the big shots from the charming spirit race would come here to research this well. They wanted to use this as an entry point to figure out the secrets of this realm. Some said that the Void Imperfection 3 schools paid the most attention to this well. Their experts would personally come here each time to explore it. Because of this, people speculated that these old men concealing their identities were from the 3 schools. Among the younger generation, Yan Yanglong and Daoist attendant Lin, who were quite famous, were staying in order to see if any divine water would start to flow. For those from the great lineages, they had access to records left behind in their sections. They stated that this well was one of the most notable locations in the fragmented realm. That went double for the Dao attendant due to the belief that the water here had a great effect on those who cultivated the Void Imperfection physique. The two youths came closer and took a good look. However, nothing came of it. The well was dried up and there was no water, just as the legend claimed. Nevertheless, both the young and old continued to stay. The two youths hoped that these great characters could figure something out. Perhaps by lingering around, they would be able to pick up some benefits afterward. That fierce person who ate dragon tendons is here. At this time, someone shouted, resulting in a great commotion. A lot of people turned and saw Li Chia slowly walking closer with 2 lads behind him. His arrival attracted the attention of both Yan Yanglong and Dao attendant Lin. A few big shots who were shrouding their appearances looked over as well. Many people made way for him. This was not because they were afraid of Li Chia, but because the teeming crown prince had expressed his desire to eat Li Chia alive. Many people considered him as a plague. No one wanted to catch his unluckiness. It's crazy to eat dragon tendons in public. Despite knowing his ultimate fate of being torn apart by the teeming tribe and becoming the prince's food, some were still secretly admiring him. In this world, how many people would dare to feast on tendons so blatantly? How many people would dare to provoke the teeming tribe like this? His domineering and arrogant style was indeed worthy of admiration. Dao attendant Lin's eyes flashed with a cold glint after seeing Li Chia. He had been wanting to kill Li Chia long ago, but after seeing how Li Chia killed Gongsun Qianer, he felt some hesitation. Without knowing Li Chia's true strength, he wouldn't carelessly move against him. Nevertheless, he quietly called for a disciple and ordered him to go tell the teeming crown prince. As long as the prince came, this boy would die without a doubt. Li Chia looked around lazily. His eyes darted to the big shots hiding their true forms and smiled. You're all here to see if there is any Void Imperfection spring water? Don't be too greedy about certain things. These big shots didn't say anything and just stood there calmly. Li Chia didn't say anything else and jumped into the divine well for a better look. It was only a pit. If one really wanted to point out something extraordinary in this common well, then it would be the slight protrusion on one of the walls that resembled the mouth of an eagle. Nothing else was notable. In fact, many people had jumped down before Li Chia for a better look. They used their divine intent to sweep through this place over and over, but nothing was found. Yan Yanglong standing above the divine well sneered and said, countless charming spirit-wise sages have pried at it with divine mirrors to find anything at all. Trying to see through the mystery with the naked eye is mere wishful thinking. He had no grievances or feuds with Li Chia. Someone from the extreme Yang school like him didn't need to bother a human boy, it was just that he didn't like looking at Li Chia's arrogant and imperious attitude. In his eyes, even his master, the extreme young monarch, didn't act as haughty as this. What grounds did this human boy have to act like this? Chapter 12:07 Void Imperfection Water. After doing his round down in the well, Li Qie turned his head and coldly glared at Yan Yanglong before smiling to say, "Don't use the wise sages of the charming spirit race to make yourself feel better. Just be straight and say that you couldn't find anything even after using a divine mirror. People are stupid to some extent, everyone knows this, so no one will laugh at you specifically." To be publicly ridiculed like this left Yan Yanglong humiliated. His master could deter the entire Jade Sea, and he himself was more or less famous. Naive fool, such a big tone. Yan Yanglong knew that Li Qie was not weak after seeing his quick dispatch of Gongsun Qianer. However, he couldn't back down in this situation. "You think you can find some clues alone? How utterly ridiculous." "Really?" Li Qie lazily replied, "Your demeanor indicates how highly you view yourself. If I can find something from this well, then wouldn't you lose all face? If you can make the divine water come out, I won't say a single word and eat all the mud around this well." Yan Yanglong felt his temper worsening and sneered. Dao attendant Lin, who was standing with him, joined in with a mocking grin. "Brother Yanglong, aren't you making things too difficult for him? One would have to be daydreaming to think that a human junior could make divine water come out." At this time, the cultivators on the sidelines only watched and didn't want to join in this mess. Meanwhile, the real big shots were just watching the fun with amusement. Li Qie looked at him with disdain and smiled. "Don't forget your words, remember to eat all the mud here. You." The continuous ridicule left Yan Yanglong with an extremely ugly expression accompanied by murderous flashes in his eyes. Li Qie ignored him and placed the jade bowl in front of him before sitting down and closing his eyes. At this moment, those next to the well were watching with bated breaths. They took note of Li Qie's confidence and wanted to see if he could gather divine water or not. In fact, they had their own plans. If Li Qie were to be successful, would they be able to get part of the soup pot as well? As for the bet between the two, it had nothing to do with them. After all, most were unwilling to provoke an existence like the extreme young school. Both Ting Jiwen and Yi Tu were anxious as well. They wanted to see what kind of miracle Li Qie could concoct. They believed in him. This was especially true for Ting Jiwen. He had absolute faith in Li Qie's ability to make divine water come out. As time slowly passed, the well remained calm without any changes. Yan Yanglong coldly sneered after seeing this. If this could lead to divine water, then people would be obtaining treasures everywhere in the charming fragmented realm. "Ha, stop pretending and just admit your defeat. Because you are still young, I will be magnanimous and won't be too hard on you. Just prostrate and bow 3 times before everyone." Splash. Before Yan Yanglong could finish, the sound of water flowing came out. A small pillar of water shot out from the mud inside the well. It resembled a dragon spraying out water, and it fell straight into Li Qie's jade bowl. This divine water rattled like little jewels as it fell into the bowl, resulting in a crisp and pleasant sound. Everyone knew right away that it was an exalted type of water. In the blink of an eye, the jade bowl was full and the stream of water disappeared as if nothing had happened. Mists that seemed to be divine energy surrounded the jade bowl. This mist slowly rose like the blossoming of a lotus flower crafted from jade. It was beautiful and breathtaking. People's hearts began to palpitate at its sight. In a short period of time, the 4 corners went silent. Everyone stared at this scene in disbelief. Who would have thought that this abandoned well would still have divine water? Someone among the hidden masters saw the water inside Li Qie's jade bowl and exclaimed, "Void imperfection water." Li Qie glanced at this group and flatly said, "You already have what you should. To be more covetous is something even the villainous heavens won't agree to. Must you want everything in this treasure ground?" This old man was startled and didn't say anything else. He bowed to Li Qie and quietly stood to the side. After hearing this, Yi Tu, who had turned into a young attendant, was shaken. He immediately understood where these big shots came from. Li Qie handed the bowl full of void imperfection water to Yi Tu and said, "This water is suitable. Even though it is not as plentiful as the void imperfection spring, it is still the same type of water. This bowl will be quite beneficial for you." Yi Tu was jolted. Even though his school had the spring, only a few ancestors were allowed to see it. Ordinary disciples weren't qualified to do so. Yi Tu accepted the jade bowl and thanked Li Qie. He had no words to express his gratitude. At this time, Dao attendant Lin put on a humble posture and bowed towards Yi Tu. "My master is the Lord of the Immaculate Expanse. His venerable requires a bowl of void imperfection water right away. Would brother be willing to sell it?" The Dao attendant didn't dare to ask Li Qie and went for Yi Tu instead. He had no choice but to act humble because this water was indeed very beneficial to their void imperfection physique. The attendant's words carried quite some weight as well because he was asking on behalf of his master. Where did this trash roll out from? Li Qie coldly peered at him and answered before Yi Tu could do anything, "Opposing me yet you still want to talk about business?" Scram! Li Qie simply gave no face to his enemies. It was already merciful enough that he hasn't chopped off his head. "You!" Being shouted at by Li Qie left him with an ugly expression. He was trembling with anger, but he didn't explode. This was him asking for it, but in his mind, the bowl of water was simply too tempting. Despite knowing the inevitable disgraceful outcome, he still had to ask Yi Tuesday. Ignoring the Dao attendant, Li Qie shifted his attention to Yan Yanglong instead and lazily said, "Now, isn't it time for you to eat all the mud here?" Yan Yanglong stumbled backward under Li Qie's gaze. He wasn't looking his best at this moment, but he couldn't get off the tiger. He spoke too harshly earlier, so now, when Li Qie actually drew out some void imperfection water, he had no other choice. However, he couldn't eat all the mud around the well in front of everyone like this. By doing so, he would never be able to show his face again in the world. Moreover, this would be a detriment to his master and sect's prestige as well. Li Qie lazily quipped, "Oh? All talk but no action? You are very lucky to be able to draw some void imperfection water." "This is a miracle." Yan Yanglong tried to find an excuse to avoid eating the muddy soil. "A real man stays true to his words. Start swallowing the mud already." Li Qie looked coldly at the fella. The spectators were holding their breaths and didn't want to get involved in these muddy waters. "Boy, don't push it too far." Yan Yanglong turned red and struggled with his retort. "You are deliberately humiliating my master and the extreme young school." At this time, he didn't have any other plans and could only accuse Li Qie to escalate the situation and bring up his master and school. "If your school has cowardly members that aren't able to stay true to their word, am I the one that is humiliating your school?" Li Qie wanted nothing more than to make this a bigger deal. "If your master's guidance resulted in a coward like you, then it looks like he is not much either." People took deep breaths after hearing this. It was an overbearing and suicidal move to put down the extreme young monarch in front of everyone like this. However, this was a way out for Yan Yanglong. At this moment, nothing else mattered since Li Qie had publicly humiliated his master. This was a damning action. He angrily shouted with a solemn tone, "Little beast, shaming my master deserves 1,000 deaths. You will not find mercy." "Brother Yanglong, this naive fool dares to offend the extreme young monarch. This is akin to opposing the entire extreme young school and all charming spirits. A little beast like this should be minced to pieces." Dao attendant Lin was happy to create more enemies for Li Qie. This was in accordance with Li Qie's wish, so their schemes were playing right into his hands. He smiled and pointed at the two to say, "These are the outstanding members of the charming spirit race? To be considered outstanding at such a low level? Does the charming spirit race have no shame, to have the nerve to call yourselves the favored children of the heavens? In my eyes, these trash aren't even comparable to ants. As for this extreme young monarch or whatever immaculate expanse, they aren't even shit in my eyes." This blatant provocation made the two's expressions turn red and ugly. For personal grievances, it was true they dragged their sex into this matter. However, Li Qia's public disparagement was too much for them to swallow. "Fool, you don't know life from death." A chilling shout came about at this time. Chapter 1208, conveniently dispatching the enemies. A youth descended from the sky with gushing blood energy and bright lights in an oppressive manner. The aggressive glint in his eyes shot everywhere as he exuded an unrestrained cocky attitude. There were many old men behind him with great blood energies. None of them were weak. "The teeming crown prince is here." One person shouted while others made way for the prince. This was the firstborn of the teeming tribe master, its future leader. His fame was widespread across the 5 rivers and 4 seas. Only a true paragon would be able to blow the crown prince away with just one slap. Shortly after, the scene turned very quiet as fear crept up among the crowd. They glanced at each other in disbelief. Since when did the human race have such a young paragon? In fact, regardless of the era, all who could reach this realm at such a young age would be geniuses. Even if they couldn't deter the world, they would still enjoy great fame. However, no one had heard of the name Li Qia before. Moreover, humans were too rare in the heaven spirit world. Such a young paragon should have been famous long ago. All eyes were on him. Those with weaker cultivations felt their hearts jumping. They secretly praised their good fortune for not fighting with Li Qia earlier. After all, they would only be fish on a chopping block before a virtuous paragon. Li Qia slowly turned around and walked towards the Dao attendant suppressed by the divine seal. His body had completely shattered under the absolute suppression. He desperately tried to activate his void suppression physique, but there was no response. Li Qia coldly stared him down and said, "I didn't kill you earlier because I want you to die with clarity." With a blanched complexion, the attendant harshly shouted, My master is the supreme master of the Immaculate Expanse." He couldn't finish his sentence before Li Qia completely smashed his skull with a stomp. "Off to hell with him." People's hearts skipped a beat after hearing this bone-crushing noise. What a vexing and miserable way to go. He then walked past and looked at Yan Yanglong while smiling. "I have always been a merciful person. If you eat all the soil now, I can still spare your life." Chapter 1209, delivering the skull as a present. Yan Yanglong couldn't move even if he wanted to. While nailed to the ground by the law, he desperately struggled, but it was futile. He wanted to use his extreme young physique to burn this law, but regardless of how much power it emitted, it couldn't burn this single law. The mud and soil around him had melted completely, but the law was untouched. He cried out in response, "Li, kill me if you dare. What's the point of humiliating me? Even if I die, I still won't eat the mud." Both treasures and merit laws were divided and some were kept inside the beast. If one day the 3 schools were to meet a formidable enemy and be completely destroyed, as long as the ancestral whale was still there, there was a chance to rise again. Unless this enemy was able to destroy the ancestral whale as well, the spark of the 3 schools would continue to be passed down for generations. It wasn't an easy matter to destroy an existence like the ancestral whale. An immortal emperor going all out might be able to do so, but even god kings were not sufficient for this task. Moreover, the location of the whale had always been a secret. Very few within the sects knew its true whereabouts. Its cruising trajectory through the vast seas was impossible to predict. And after a long journey, it would swim to the depths of the sea to hibernate out of sight. An old man was waiting for Li Qia the moment he entered this region. The old man had a full beard and white hair, making him look like an old mortal around the age of 70. No one knew how long he had lived for. Nevertheless, his blood energy was still robust. This was a terrifying god king. "You must be young noble Li." The old man cupped his fists and smiled at Li Qia. Li Qia smiled back and nodded. "Following the ancestral whale has been very rewarding for you. It looks like you have lived for 2 generations now." The old man was frightened to hear this. His identity had always been a secret, even to his own sect. His mind shuddered at the sudden revelation of his longevity. Chapter 12:10, Ancestral Wail. The old man took a deep breath and said, "Young noble, your vision is wonderful. I am full of admiration, please come inside." Li Qia nodded and stepped into the sea. In the blink of an eye, they sank to the deepest region of the seabed before stopping in front of a mountain. Crack! A burst of collapsing rubble resounded. The mountain not far from Li Qia shattered into pieces. Boulders fell down, causing the fish nearby to flee in horror. When this mountain shattered completely, it suddenly became bright. A ray of light illuminated the bottom of the sea. Before them was a magnificent world, mysterious and sparkling. It resembled a portal leading to a whole new world. Upon a closer inspection, one would see that this was no portal at all. It was an unbelievably large eye. This eye was previously covered by the mountains. When this eye opened completely, its light completely engulfed Li Qia. Rumble. The earth began to quake as if the entire sea was about to be overturned. Tidal waves rose to the vault of the sky as if something was awakening, something capable of destroying the stars up in the 9 heavens. More mountains began to collapse in this area. The islands on the surface crumbled as well and sank to the bottom. How can this be? The old man was shocked and exclaimed, Why is the ancestral whale waking up before the appointed time?" Boom! A tsunami of limitless height assaulted the sky, resulting in a spectacular scene. A monstrous whale emerged from the sea. This region's geography was changed completely. This whale was no different than a continent appearing at sea level. There was no end to this whale as far as the eyes could see. It was as long as a mountain range floating above the sea. This was the ancestral whale of the Void Imperfection 3 schools. Very few people in this world had seen it before. Despite rumors of having a true dragon bloodline, its lacking intelligence prevented it from turning into a true dragon for now. Li Qia stood above its gigantic head at this time. It was no different from an island that spanned thousands of miles. Li Qia patted its head and spoke with emotions. "In the northern darkness, there is a fish and his name is Kuan. The Kuan is so huge, who knows how many million li he measures." According to their ancestral teachings, Li Qia was qualified to take the water here. Moreover, he was also a whale rider, thus he had the great authority to take as much as he wanted. It was not a big deal. After taking enough, Li Qia turned and left. However, the moment he exited the palace, several old men could be found kneeling on the ground with great reverence. They normally stayed inside the ancestral whale for a long period of time. "What are you doing?" Li Qia glanced at them and flatly said, "I am not your whale rider, get up." One of them hurriedly said, "Young noble, please stay. Our 3 schools require your leadership. As long as you are there, we will return to one again." Li Qia smiled and gently shook his head. "I already said I am not a whale rider, I'm only a fleeting passenger. There's no need to care or pay attention to me. But the ancestral whale has chosen you as its rider." This old man answered with haste, "Maybe young noble is unaware of the significance of being a whale rider. For millions of years, the countless wise sages from our schools all desired to become one." Li Qia gently waved his sleeve and said, "I know what it means to be one. When your progenitor and the 2 grand completion physique users are not in this world, the whale rider represents the highest authority in the 3 schools. This person can reunite the 3 schools into one again." The old man elaborated, "Young noble, you are completely correct. As long as you stay, all of the disciples will listen to your commands, all of our resources will be for you to use, I understand." Li Qia was without any interest. For many people, to become a whale rider is the highest of honors, the greatest symbol of authority, the thing that many wise sages from your schools have been longing for. Chapter 12:11, Beginning of the Grand Scheme. Li Qia paused a bit to stare at the old man ahead while voicing his refusal. "All of this has nothing to do with me. As a passerby, I am insignificant to your 3 schools. The old man repeated, "But young noble, you have been chosen by the ancestral whale. Since the start of time, few have been chosen by it. This must be the imperial decree of our progenitor, immortal Emperor Wu Go." Li Chia interrupted him, "Okay, I have a deeper understanding of this matter than you lot. There's no need to use the emperor as justification. Just remember what I have said, I cannot bring anything to your schools, so don't rely on me." Having said that, he turned and left. These old men felt helpless and only followed Li Chia to see him off. After leaving the ancestral whale's body, Li Chia stood on the sea's surface to look at its gigantic size. He sighed gently and touched it while murmuring, "We'll meet again if it is meant to be." "Woo!" The whale cried out and gently moved its huge head ever so slightly forward against Li Chia's palm. The old men were in disbelief after seeing how intimate the pair was. Outside of immortal Emperor Wu Go, no one else had been this close to the whale. Li Chia patted the whale's head. He gave this whale to immortal Emperor Wu Go when it was still an infant. Later on, it always accompanied the emperor. Eventually, Li Chia looked at the old men and said, "Even if you see a friend off for 1,000 miles, you will still have to part in the end. Go back now, the ancestral whale will start moving again." An old man still didn't give up and told Li Chia, "Young noble, you can reconsider later. If you do return to our schools in the future, all of our echelons will obey your commands." Li Chia only smiled and reached out with his palm. A portal opened and he vanished inside. He went back to Peacock Land and saw Kong Chinru. She busily asked after seeing him again, "Young noble, the preparations have been carried out. The inhabitants here have been evacuated, may I ask when you will start?" Li Chia smiled and slowly uttered, "Very soon. Everything is ready, we are only waiting for the east wind." Thus, everyone wanted this art that would allow them to have a second life. But as time passed, how many had seen this art or knew why the emperor was unkillable? After a few days, several strange visual phenomena emerged at Peacock Land. At first, a bloody light soared to the sky in a boundless manner like an inexhaustible flood. The entire place trembled with earthquakes. Next, it began to crack, forming a great chasm as if the entire land was about to crumble. Cultivators and sects from the outside were attracted by the frequent changes of this land. A piece of news quickly spread across the entire heaven spirit world. The peacock tree is about to wither and die. No one knows who began to gossip first, but it traveled very quickly across the Jade Sea. The sea was in a clamor. Many cultivators and sects discussed this matter. In the heaven spirit world and all that inhabit it, an existence like an ancestral tree dying was an earth-shattering event. A big sect didn't believe this news. They immediately sent disciples to Peacock Land to seek confirmation. After seeing these visual images, the disciple went back to report right away. After confirming the information, the sect master of this sect murmured, "It looks like the peacock tree is truly dying." An elder said, with a quick finger auger, "The peacock tree's lifespan should end right about now. The tree father has returned to the earth for too long, the time is about right." Isn't this too fast though? The death of the peacock tree is inevitable, but this collapse is too sudden. What happened to accelerate this withering process? A different big shot was curious and decided to go see for himself. Some were saddened by this news, but even more were excited. For many people and sects, a dying ancestral tree meant a great feast was coming. Anyone would want a bowl of soup from this great feast. Chapter 12:12. The prelude before the storm. The withering of the tree meant that it was about to return everything to the earth. Many treasures would be thrown out along with a huge amount of worldly essence. It was certainly a feast for any cultivator or sect. If they could obtain a great treasure during this frenzy, it would bring about a lifetime of benefits. They might even become wealthy overnight due to the great reversal of fortune. From then, they would embark on a road towards invincibility. It wasn't like such a thing had never happened before. In the past, some people had obtained the main roots of a dying tree father, allowing them to cultivate at a quicker pace and eventually become a god king. The entire heaven spirit world was excited as many people ran for Peacock Land. This death is coming too fast. I thought the tree would last for 1 or 2 more generations. A real master from the previous generation heard this news and was surprised. He felt fairly hesitant. Most were unable to sit still, but some experienced big shots were more cautious. They could speculate that even though the tree was withering, it could still struggle on for dozens of years or even a full century with its power. As long as the tree was still alive, who would dare to scheme for the treasures and worldly essence? No one wanted to fight an ancestral tree, even if it was dying. However, some of them still became impatient. After several more days, one more piece of news came from the Jade Sea. It stated, Peacock Land is shattering. The peacock tree is bound to die in half a month if early or half a year if late. With this, these older cultivators could wait no longer despite their skepticism. They were unwilling to miss this feast, and so began to travel towards Peacock Land to verify this news. In a short period of time, people rushed to this land to see if they could get a share. There were many charming spirits, treants, and sea demons, so it became quite lively. The lineages closest to Peacock Land had an advantage. They were there already by the time others arrived. The inhabitants of Peacock Land were long gone. The land was deserted and lonely until all of these cultivators came along. All sorts of cultivators showed up, ranging from treants covered in leaves and crab demons with a human head to beautiful and handsome charming spirits. Occasionally, one could see 1 or 2 human cultivators. All the races were excited about the upcoming harvest, only the human race was mourning. The peacock tree held a sentimental spot in the minds of many humans since it had done a lot for them. It was the second land of the humans, their home. The withering of the tree meant that this land would cease to exist and shatter into little pieces. Thereafter, the human race would lose a stronghold and haven in the heaven spirit world. Even though some humans wanted to do something for the tree, even their top-level experts were powerless. Its lifespan had run out, so this was an irreversible situation. The only cure was life replenishment. However, this was simply impossible. Even top experts couldn't do it, for this was a task tantamount to life replenishing an immortal emperor. The cultivators rushing here found many cracks on this massive land. Seawater was gushing through the cracks and a lot of the vegetation on the continent had begun to wither as well. The quaking was becoming more common, as if this place was about to crumble at any second. It looks like the peacock tree can't hold on any longer. This land is falling apart. It won't be long now. Even if it won't turn to ashes, it will fragment into little pieces. A big shot from the previous generation was not quite convinced in the beginning, but he changed his mind after coming here. The residents here probably knew that the tree was about to die, so they evacuated first. An expert wasn't surprised to see the place empty either. Some human cultivators came running onto the land in search for their kin to see if there were still families stranded on the island. This disaster was a time for the human race to unite. As long as there were still people that had yet to evacuate, regardless of whether they were mortals or cultivators, other humans would lend them a hand. In this dire strait, the humans had to rely on each other. The exquisite valley did a great job of evacuating everyone. The human cultivators searched all corners of the land but didn't find any people stranded. These helpers heaved a sigh of relief after discovering this. The situation became more pessimistic as the days passed. Today, the earthquakes were extremely frequent, resulting in even more cracks and the invasion of seawater into the crevices of the land. Fall back, we'll watch from outside. A lineage who wanted a piece of this feast ordered their disciples to retreat. They went out to sea and began to play the waiting game. The imminent destruction of the land made many sects leave this place. They waited for the death of the peacock tree right outside as well. Experienced characters knew that when the peacock tree dies, this land would be crushed or even turn into smoke. At that time, the destructive force would be incredible. An ancestral tree was an existence comparable to an immortal emperor. Just imagine the destructive power that would result from the collapse of an immortal emperor. If anyone dared to stay behind, they would be crushed in their final moment, getting nothing out of it. The outer sea right now was stationed full of cultivators. Some big sects and ancient schools were keeping guard with different methods. One of the powerful sects used a great ship to float at sea and occupy the most advantageous position. Another Treant tribe took root in the seabed and had a huge towering tree growing from it. It twisted and turned into a favorable position for seizing the treasures. The moment the ancestral tree died, they would flip the earth over to seize the most valuable resources. Some sea clans came in droves as well. They stayed in the vast sea and were ready to take whatever edge they could see. Moreover, people from outside of the Jade Sea were gathering as well. The death of an ancestral tree was a great event, so even sects from farther regions sent disciples over. As for the human cultivators, they stayed in this area with great confusion. Were they here to look at Peacock Land one last time? Was it to seize the treasures as well? Or could it be to say their final farewell to the peacock tree? While many cultivators gathered in this region, a young lad appeared out of nowhere. This human youth looked quite plain. Even his blood energy was feeble, so he definitely didn't resemble an expert. He drew a large circle that covered the marine regions outside, with the center being Peacock Land. The majority of the sects were within the boundary of this circle, only a few cultivators were outside. Many people found this young human cultivator's actions quite strange. They didn't know what this brat was trying to do. At this time, he took out a sign and wrote a few words: "Danger Zone, do not enter or die." He put these signs everywhere, causing the cultivators waiting in this area to look at each other. They didn't know what he was trying to do. Was this a nice reminder or a warning to everyone? Another human cultivator couldn't help but ask, "Hey, what are you doing?" Of course, this youth was Wuxia. He was particularly patient and approachable at this time. He replied with a friendly smile, "I am reminding everyone about how dangerous this place is. Countless existences will die, so for everyone's safety, it is best to stand outside of the circle." His bashful smile was a bit unbearable. Those who knew Wuxia would definitely not believe their eyes after seeing him smiling like this. Ha ha ha, where did this human boy come from to be making such alarmist claims? One of the people present sneered. He probably has some ulterior motives, such as trying to frighten others away so the humans can monopolize the treasures. It was an old man that looked like a snake coiled around a small tree. In fact, the snake body and tree branch were inseparable. Only his head was in human form. This was an Ophidian Treant, a branch from the Treant race. However, this man maintained his original form and didn't cultivate a complete human form. He was an elder of his tribe. At this time, he had a dark smile on his face and believed that Wuxia was scheming. Many people were a bit startled and felt that this was logical. Otherwise, why would a human be so nice as to remind them like this? He surely had ulterior motives. Very briefly, their eyes fell upon Wuxia with a different light. So he is just here to scare everyone. The deputy leader snorted and shouted, "Speak! Who sent you here? Tell the truth to avoid pain. Kindness is treated as malice. If you want to die so much, it is your own business." Wuxia gave him an indifferent glance and said, "I have warned everyone to stand outside the circle to the best of my ability. Life or death will now depend on your own fortune." With that, he turned and left. "Junior, stop right now." The deputy leader screamed and reached out to grab Wuxia. However, Wuxia's body flashed and easily evaded his clutch before turning around to face him. "Heh, looks like you have some moves." The deputy leader sneered, "State your name, I will not kill a nobody. Quickly reveal who is giving you orders or suffer." "Wuxia." Wuxia lazily said, "Scram before I become angry." Many people were unfamiliar with this name, but some had heard it before. A cultivator from the Jade Sea said, "He is that Wuxia, the fierce youth who dares to eat dragon tendons in public." A few who had heard of his name found it quite surprising while stealing glances at him. They didn't expect for this seemingly ordinary human to be the monster who ate dragon tendons. They all assumed that he would look like a vicious and domineering brute. After all, eating dragon tendons was something that would provoke billions of teeming fish. Only an overbearing monster would be able to do something like this. Alas, the Li Chia in front of them bore no semblance of this preconceived image. You are that Li Chia. The deputy master became hesitant. He had heard of Li Chia's notoriety. Someone who dared to publicly eat tendons was certainly not ordinary and nice. Li Chia coldly stated, now that you know, do not provoke me. Ha ha ha, such confidence. This isn't a place a human brat like you can give orders. The elder from the Ophidian tribe wanted to fan the flames. After hearing this, the deputy master arched his chest and coldly said, the elder is right. This place belongs to everyone. What makes you think you can act presumptuously and make other people stand outside of the circle? What is your true goal? At the very least, he was still a deputy master. If he couldn't utter a few strong words, he would be in an awkward situation bereft of any face. Even his sect would lose some reputation. Scram right now or I'll kill you before the disaster even gets here. Li Chia was losing his patience. Glances were exchanged in the crowd after hearing this. They finally felt that this normal human was incredibly fierce and domineering. He actually dared to scold the leader of a sect like this. The deputy leader lost a lot of face from being scolded by a junior. How could he swallow this anger? Boy, today, I will flay you alive. He took out his saber and threatened with a chilling gaze. With that, his saber slashed through the sky at an extreme speed straight for Li Chia's chest. He wanted to kill him with a single blow. Li Chia raised his brows while a cold glint flashed across his eyes. He formed a fist and launched it at the oncoming blade. With a buzz, boundless brilliance surged forth. A huge amount of refined sunfire gushed out, as if 9 suns were rising from his fist. The moment these suns came out, they instantly incinerated everything. In a split second, the deputy master's saber was melted into molten metal. He screamed right before he was turned into smoke. Not even his bones were left behind. Though he was not weak, one who had yet to become a paragon was no different from an ant before Li Chia. Extreme Young Fist of the myriad Tao fists, the moment it came out, it would scorch the 9 heavens and 10 earths, let alone a mere deputy master. This is the most ridiculous and outlandish thing I've ever seen. Li Chia was not interested in responding to this charming spirit either. Nevertheless, Li Chia's words startled the human cultivators quite a bit. They suddenly saw hope and asked, Taoist, is this possible? Can you actually succeed? The human race naturally didn't want to see the peacock tree die, as they would lose this land completely. Li Chia plainly answered, yes. Heh, people actually believe in this pretentious mess? A sea demon snorted, only a fool would believe him. Everyone knows that for millions of years, no one has ever life replenished an ancestral tree. In my opinion, this so-called life replenishment is only a facade. He is secretly plotting something else. What did all the other cultivators come here to do? Of course they came for the treasures. They were all waiting for the tree to die, so who would want to hear about Li Chia trying to save it? Wasn't this cutting off their path to riches? He had become public enemy number 1. That's right. Prolonging the life of an ancestral tree is a lunatic's raving. He must be hiding his true purpose. Quite a few members of the crowd echoed this sentiment with jeers. Chapter 12:15, Golden Crow Monarch. The human cultivators with newfound hope were shaken after hearing this. They also felt that this renewal was impossible. After all, no one had succeeded for millions of years. Li Chia glanced at the few human cultivators and flatly said, this is a troubled place with an incoming disaster. Blood will stain the land and bones will fill this ocean, so leave while you can. Return to your homes. After hearing this, the humans darted their eyes at each other with hesitation. 1 or 2 people left, but the rest remained. Li Chia was not too persuasive since he knew that they didn't completely trust him. He, just a human brat spouting nonsense. What a naive fool. A gloomy voice sounded at this moment. The water splashed and separated to form a road on the sea. An old man emerged from the depths with more than 10 ministers dressed in both scholarly and martial uniforms. Every single one of them was full of blood energy and looked quite extraordinary. Before he could recover from the dizziness, the chain coiled around the peacock tree once and turned back to wring his neck. No! The monarch was still screaming as his limbs convulsed. In a split second, he was bound to the peacock tree and strangled to death. His true fate wanted to break out of his body, but there wasn't any opportunity. His true fate was sealed within his body and perished alongside it. This all happened too quickly. People couldn't even react in time to the monarch being strangled alive. Go! After seeing his death, the turtle minister was shocked. He ordered and ran with the rest of his men. Whoosh! The chain soared like a true dragon. Before the turtle and his officials could dive down into the ocean, the chain wrapped around their necks. Bang! 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 All of them crashed into the peacock tree. No, the group was scared out of their minds and screamed. Alas, their cries didn't last long as they were also strangled to death and hung there on the tree. In a short period of time, those who were strapped to the peacock tree all had their eyes wide open, for they died with grievances. They came to get revenge for their disciples, but they didn't expect to pay with their own lives in the process. They had truly underestimated Li Qia's strength. In their minds, a nameless human junior could only be an ordinary paragon at best. If he was stronger than this level, then he would have been quite famous already. Thus, they were confident in their victory. But alas, they couldn't have imagined that they wouldn't be able to block even one move from him. They died indignant deaths full of unanswered questions. People were horrified to see these corpses hanging from the peacock tree and couldn't help but shiver. Chapter 12:16. Teeming Tribe Master. While staring at the hanging corpses, one person quivered and murmured, "Another brilliant genius coming out of nowhere. Can he compare to the profound God Monarch, the Seven Seas War Goddess, the Swift Tao Celestial God, and the Sea Shield Heavenly Prince?" In the next generation, this tribe would multiply again for a counter-attack and even extinguish the offspring of whoever assaulted them. Human brat, if you kneel and surrender, I will only torture you to death. If you resist, I will kill your 10 clans. I don't care what power you are from or what your identity is, we will chase you to the ends of this world and kill all of your clan members and anyone who has anything to do with you. People shuddered after hearing this declaration, true to the vengeful reputation of this tribe. Li Qia finally stood up from the peacock tree to lazily look at the sea full of teeming fish. He smilingly said, "Only a bunch of ants that love to toot their own horns. You love to bully the weak yet are afraid of the strong. Do you really think your tribe is invincible due to your sheer numbers?" Li Qia continued, "For countless years when many immortal emperors, sea gods, and tree fathers want to eat dragon tendons, they would casually grab the fattest teeming fish, scrape off its scales, then cut them into slices before eating the tendon. Then, they would top it off with a plate of fish and drink soup stock made from the fish bones. What a pleasant and delicious meal. It's a shame that your tribe didn't even dare to fart as these beings devoured you, only turning a blind eye to everything. Heh, you would only act arrogant against tiny sections." Li Qia shook his head and sneered. Chapter 12:17. One massacring 1 million. With that, Li Qia glared at the teeming tribe master and grinned, "Only an inept bunch boasting about how vicious you are every day. How domineering and aggressive, but ultimately, you're still a bunch of turtles hiding in their shells." Such contempt left the spectators slack-jawed. No one had ever thought that they would hear this level of blatant disdain towards the teeming fish. However, some secretly applauded him, especially those who had been bullied by this tribe before. They felt especially happy since his words resonated with their own thoughts. As a matter of fact, many knew that the teeming fish knew to pick their opponents very well. They weren't ferocious to just anyone. For example, great hegemons like the Golden Isle, the Void Imperfection 3 schools, and Gu Chun's 4 branches weren't provoked by the teeming fish. Otherwise, they would have been slaughtered by the immortal emperors, tree fathers and sea demons countless times. As for the other sects, they weren't strong enough to kill all of the fish, so more often than not, they would suffer losses to these fish without voicing their displeasure. He's right. Humph. Rumor has it that the grand completion immortal physique users of Gu Chun's 4 branches love to eat dragon tendons, but no one has heard of the teeming fish attacking the 4 branches for revenge. Someone couldn't help say this out of dissatisfaction towards the teeming tribe. His senior was frightened and immediately covered his mouth. He slapped him and stated, "Are you tired of living? Even if you are, don't drag the sect into this." Li Qia's words darkened the tribe master's old face. He felt like his chest would explode from anger as he trembled. The million fish in the sea had fire in their eyes while glaring at Li Qia. If glares could kill, then Li Qia would have died countless times already. A teeming fish angrily shouted, "Tribe master, let us tear this little animal to pieces so our brothers can eat his flesh, drink his blood and chew his bones." Yes. Let us eat his flesh, drink his blood and chew his bones. The other fish immediately echoed the sentiment. Their furious roars soared to the sky and shook the sea. Many cultivators were aghast after feeling the wrath of the fish and turned pale. Today was the day that they would witness the ferocity of the teeming tribe. Devour me? Li Qia couldn't help but smile before leisurely replying, "With a bunch of trash like you? Not to mention this army of 1 million, even if the billions of teeming fish in the heaven spirit world were here, I still wouldn't give a damn." This direct provocation left people exchanging glances with each other. Here were more than 10 high elders of the tribe and even the tribe master himself. At least 10 virtuous paragons were here, not to mention the vast armies of soldiers. The tribe master shouted, "Little beast, you will experience a fate worse than death. We shall stomp on your bones. My children. Feast on him. Kill." The furious army crazily cried out before frenziedly rushing for Peacock Land. These waves of fish slammed straight towards the island as if wanting to break it apart. Li Qia smiled and, with a buzz, a law emerged from his heavenly cauldron. Rumble. In a split second, bubbles sprayed out of the sea. These bubbles looked just like little palms that began to grab the teeming fish. They grabbed all of them without exception despite their great numbers. Even the group of the tribe master couldn't escape. All were caught by these palms made out of water. Activate. The shocked fish took action and tried to slash through these palm-shaped bubbles. However, this water had been refined by Li Qia to be one with the ocean. How could these teeming fish cut through it? Too late. Li Qia gently smiled. With a boom, this area suddenly formed little cauldrons that ignited. The fiery cauldrons turned into huge palms that descended from the sky to grab the heads of these fish. Ah! Miserable screams echoed across this land. These screams resonated with each other, creating a hellish scene. While listening to the ups and downs of this grim melody, anyone would feel that they were trapped in hell. Pluff. 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 The hands made out of water began to pull. These fishes' heads and bodies were separated, and even their spines were being pulled out. This was an extremely scary spectacle. The tribe master screamed, "No!" His body was being abnormally elongated. He tried to escape from the hands, but he still failed despite being a virtuous paragon. Eventually, he let out one last shriek and couldn't escape the fate of decapitation like the rest. It would be a shame to waste all of these lives. Li Qia smirked. Boom! The cauldron flame changed again. These bubbles turned into stoves and instantly refined the million bodies into ashes. Their vitality was taken away and sucked into the myriad heavenly cauldron. At this time, the flame that came from the sky turned into crimson chains and hung the fish heads in the sky. This scene was too spectacular and terrifying. The fish heads, still connected to their spines, were suspended in the air. Bleg. One person couldn't bear this horrible scene and began to vomit. Many cultivators ran away from fear. Cultivators were accustomed to death, but slaughtering 1 million in one breath was truly rare. Not to mention, these fish were still hanging in the sky. This was a scene that no one had ever seen before. It was a trap. The paled and dazed crowd finally realized that a terrifying trap was planted in this area in advance. They also understood why Wuxia warned everyone to stay out of the circle he drew. So it turned out that he was reminding people lest they be caught up in this as well. Prior to this, they thought he had an ulterior motive, but it turned out that he warned them with good intentions. Cold chills emanated from within as they began to sweat. They only left the circle to make way for the teeming fish. If it wasn't for that, their ends could have been the same as these fish before them. This must be a grand formation that harmonizes with the heaven and earth. Its power must be wondrous and must have taken more than just one day to set up. A grand character from the previous generation understood the power of this trap after seeing the teeming tribe master being unable to escape. Wuxia swept through the crowd with his eyes and slowly uttered, "Go tell the teeming fish that I will be waiting here at Peacock Land. If they want revenge, bring it on. Or, they can cower with their tails tucked between their legs and never show their faces in the heaven spirit world again." A lot of people's hearts skipped a beat after hearing this declaration of war. Wuxia had set up a grand formation here to wait for more teeming fish. Eventually, he looked at the few human cultivators and coldly spoke, "It is time for the human race to leave." These humans shuddered and some of them left immediately. However, a few chose to stay in order to see the outcome of this storm. News of Wuxia's move spread across the entire Jade Sea in a flash. The listeners batted their brows after hearing about his massacre. This person is ruthless with great schemes. Who expected him to kill 1 million teeming fish in this manner? A sect master murmured with fear in his mind. War is coming, the teeming fish will definitely not let this go. A big shot from the Treant race commented as well. Not just them, the Extreme Yang School and the Immaculate Expanse won't let this go either, or else they'll lose all face in the heaven spirit world. An ancestor gently sighed. In a short amount of time, the Jade Sea turned quiet. Many people were looking forward to the events at Peacock Land. However, they were not concerned about the peacock tree. Their eyes were on Wuxia. They all understood that his opponents had two choices: they could either fight a direct battle or avoid this trap and find opportunities to kill him later. However, avoiding this battle would be a huge blow to their prestige. The reputation established by their forefathers would be shattered overnight. If they were afraid of a single human boy, how could they guard their own territories in the future? By enduring the shame of having 1 million of their children massacred, no one would fear the teeming fish later on. Chapter 12:18, Declaration of War from 1 Million Kingdoms. After a few days, the Jade Sea and the teeming fish were still silent. There were no movements from them. However, experienced big shots could smell that something in the air had changed, the calm before the raging storm. Who knows who the ultimate victor will be? Everyone understood that Wuxia had planted a trap for the teeming fish. At this moment, the question was whether these fish would jump into this pit or not. Several more days passed and the teeming tribe was still quiet. At this time, everyone thought that they had given up. Listen up, my Night Crystal Kingdom will accept the challenge. We shall have vengeance for our 1 million dead brothers. We will not only kill you, but also your 10 clans. Eventually, one kingdom rose to the challenge. Its king sent out this fierce message. A mountain of blades and a sea of fire still won't be able to stop our Stonecloud Citadel's determination for revenge. We shall slay Wuxia. Another lineage replied to Wuxia's challenge. Without killing Wuxia's 10 clans, our 8 million strong Eastern Sea Kingdom will never return to our home. One more declared war on Wuxia. No matter how far you may be, we shall chase you to the very end for the crime of killing our comrades. Our propitious Sea Kingdom shall offer Wuxia's head to our fallen brothers. Another joined the fray. In a short period of time, the teeming fish from all over the seas accepted the challenge in succession. They all swore to kill Wuxia. Their cries echoed across the vast oceans, frightening many cultivators and lineages. Before this, the teeming fish claimed to have millions of kingdoms. Of course, people knew that this was only an exaggeration. However, after seeing one kingdom after another rising up against Wuxia, they realized for a second time just how powerful and pervasive this tribe was. Another thing to note was that the tribe had been incredibly quiet the past several days, but in just one night, numerous teeming kingdoms declared war all at once. People could faintly guess something from this. Very good, come then, my butcher's blade is waiting. Bring 10 million, slay 10 million, bring 1 trillion, I'll slay 1 trillion. And as for the Immaculate Expanse and the extreme Yang school, there's no need to hide any longer, my blade is anxious to have its fill of your blood. Wuxia's response was also quite fierce. Insufferable little Chia, our Immaculate Expanse vows to never give up until you die. The Expanse responded without any reservation. Human child, even if you prepare an inferno of blades, the greatest of formations, our extreme Yang school will still annihilate you completely. The extreme Yang school sent out their answer as well. Count our Ophidian tribe in as well. Another enemy of Wuxia released a message. And my dual pupils sect. The sect master of this lineage also sent out a strong message, kill Wuxia to rid the heaven spirit world of his evil. Very well, the nobodies want to play too. I don't mind more debts, all of you can come, little children. Your grandfather will be waiting for you at Peacock Land. Wuxia's laughter resounded across the ocean with an incomparably arrogant tone. Such an overbearing attitude left many people dumbfounded. Someone murmured, this is how a man should be. Challenging the entire world with one's own strength. Even if he dies, his life would still have been full of glory. Rumble. On this day, huge waves were thrown into the sky and blotted out the sun. The entire Jade Sea was shaking because of this. The horizon turned white after loud explosions due to the monstrous waves being pushed up. If one had a high vantage point to look down from, they would definitely be rewarded with a majestic scene. Peacock Land was the area of the world's focus. Hordes of teeming fish came from all directions. Each legion had a different system and formation as they surged for this place. The countless kingdoms had mobilized at the same time with billions of fish in their armies. In both the sky and the ocean, only teeming fish could be found. There was no end to them, their ranks spanning as far as the eyes could see. Anywhere that light could reach was occupied by fish. The troops of this tribe from all over the world gathered to form a mighty army. Oh mommy, the teeming fish are using all of their forces. Many people nearly wet their pants after seeing this lineup. Those who came for the treasures no longer dared to linger behind and quickly ran away from this land of turmoil. Damn humans. Some of the human cultivators who were already here wanted to escape. However, the perimeter of Peacock Land was completely sealed by the teeming fish. These fleeing cultivators suffered attacks right away. Even though they were quite strong, they still couldn't escape death, for they faced billions of teeming fish. With miserable screams, they were instantly eaten by them. Not even traces of their bones were left behind. They died full of regret for not listening to Wuxia earlier. If they had left as soon as possible, they wouldn't have attracted this fatal disaster, resulting in a death without a burial. Take out the heavenly mirrors. Many lineages were worried about this grand event. No one apart from top experts dared to personally come and watch. The majority of the lineages didn't want to miss this unique battle, so they didn't mind wasting refined jades to activate their heavenly mirrors. Through the mirrors, they could watch the battlefield full of teeming fish. Fish heads were bobbing back and forth. The ferocious army was armed with tridents and harpoons. The glint of their weapons illuminated the whole sea. This was not a friendly sight for cowards to watch. Even the sect masters and royal lords were creeped out by this. The billion-strong army could tear through everything. Just a few bites from each of the soldiers could destroy an entire great power. Messing with the teeming fish is like playing with a hornet's nest. A sect master murmured while breaking out in cold sweat. Another royal lord commented with anxiety, who would want to provoke these vicious fish alone outside of sea gods, tree fathers, and immortal emperors? They aren't only trying to kill Wuxia for revenge this time. This is a showing of their military might, deterring the world by showing their frightening strength, lest others want to suffer the fate of genocide. An ancestor was quite discerning. In fact, a few older ancestors knew this full well, especially those from experienced lineages like the Golden Isle or the Void Imperfection 3 schools. They had been around for too long. Wuxia had dealt a great blow to the teeming fish to the point of trampling on their reputation and prestige. Eating dragon tendons publicly was humiliating to this tribe, but now, he even massacred 1,000,000 fish and killed the symbol of their race, their tribe master. This was shaking the very foundation and status of their tribe in the heaven spirit world. If they didn't kill him today, they would never be able to regain their fierce reputation. Perhaps the world would start to think that they were easily bullied. Many lineages would want to seize their territories and people would want to eat dragon tendons. Because of this, the tribe had united and managed to muster billions of troops. This was not only to kill Wuxia, but also to show off their might and solidarity as a deterrent measure. Provoke them and face genocide. The teeming experts crowded the sky and the sea. The terrifying experts up there were all in human form. These old men were dressed in gold and wore regal clothing since they were high elders and kings. There was no lack of virtuous paragons here. Of course, it was difficult to find a god monarch in the teeming tribe. The fish were quite weak in terms of cultivation. Not to mention charming spirits, they were very far behind compared to even ordinary sea demons. However, due to their large population, they still had quite a few virtuous paragons. The hard part was to have one of these paragons reach the god monarch level. Despite the exaggeration in the rhetoric regarding their numbers, the mass ahead was indeed too immense. No other lineage could gather so many children. This magnificent scene was something only the teeming fish could produce. Eventually, their kingdoms finished gathering their troops. At this time, the Ophidian Traians and Dual Pupils sect along with another dozen lineages had aggregated to form an alliance with the teeming fish to assault Peacock Land. Chapter 12:19, The Teeming Fish on the Offensive, Boom. The billions of fish attacking Peacock Land created a spectacular scene. Just the tidal waves rushing to the sky had an unstoppable momentum. Anyone would be aghast since the entire Jade Sea was quaking from their advance. Eventually, they stopped right outside the circle drawn by Wuxia since they knew of the terrible trap waiting inside. The army looked at the millions of fish bones hanging in the sky and their fury rose uncontrollably. From foot soldiers all the way to fish kings, all reddened with rage and wanted nothing more than to tear Wuxia apart. A teeming king screamed, "We shall never return to our kingdoms before killing that little beast. Yes. Never return until we kill his 10 clans as well." The shouts of these fish echoed to the sky. Meanwhile, Wuxia was still sitting at the base of the peacock tree. He lazily stood up to look at the horde and revealed a gentle smile. "I have always been a merciful and peace-loving person, so I shall grant all of you one last chance. Immediately scurry back to your homes like good little fish or I'll kill all of you to the very root." Such words enraged the fish even more. They angrily glared at him with intense murderous intent, more than enough to kill him thousands of times over. "Little beast, today will be your demise." A fish king hovering in the sky shouted, "We'll not only kill you, we'll devour this land as well. But before that, we'll take our time torturing you until you reveal your identity, then we'll finish off your 10 clans. Both the young and old men and women in your clans will cry in agony for the rest of their lives for daring to provoke our tribe's prestige." A group of ants daring to talk about slaughtering a true dragon. Wuxia burst out in laughter. "None of you are qualified, not even if you had more people." "Is that so?" Another fish king snorted, "Keep on gloating. You won't be able to do so soon. Through the heavenly mirrors, the spectators were still holding their breaths despite being countless miles away. "Gentlemen, please break this formation." A fish king shouted at the horizon in order to call for reinforcements. Bang! A great formation consisting of more than 10 exceedingly powerful charming spirit experts descended from the sky. It was easy to tell that they were at least at the high elder level due to their gray hair. Flames covered them as this grand formation was coming down. This terrifying fire instantly suppressed the area in a frightening fashion. The commanding elder of the extreme young school. A sect master recognized the leader through the heavenly mirror. Boom! Flames fell from the sky while bubbles soared from the water. Li Qiye's formation immediately attacked the high elders. Activate! The elders shouted together and took out a cauldron. Their formation supported this cauldron, turning it into a gigantic divine cauldron. Boom! Boom! Explosions rang non-stop. This immortal cauldron crazily absorbed the flames from Li Qiye's cauldron. Even the bubbles and seawater that had fused with his fire were absorbed, with the remnants falling back into the ocean. A royal lord murmured, "Extreme young cauldron, rumored to be a great formation created by a grand completion immortal physique user." "Not bad." Li Qiye smiled. One could hear a crash followed by loud blasts. Countless laws surged from the sea in the form of gigantic chains. Each of them was as mighty as a mountain range. They tried to lock the extreme young cauldron. Don't even think about it. At this time, one more great formation appeared in the sky. The clanging of swords reverberated continuously as huge swords flew to the sky like blooming lotuses. With the blooming of these lotuses, the universal laws from the sea became much weaker. Law-evading sword formation. Someone else recognized this formation from the mirror and shouted, "This is the great formation of the Immaculate Expanse." Without a doubt, both the Extreme Young School and the Immaculate Expanse paid a huge price to utilize their great formations. They wouldn't give up until Li Qiye died. An old man inside the sword formation cried out, "Elders, together!" Buzz! Both the cauldron and sword formation exerted their maximum power. First, the cauldron was absorbing the fire from Li Qiye's cauldron while the sword law evaded the chains made out of laws. It took all the grand Tao power away from this technique. Under the two great formations, Li Qiye's trap finally shattered since both his fire and chains were cut off. Boom! The formations continued to maintain their highest level of power to suppress this region. In other words, if Li Qiye still had more traps or techniques placed here, they wouldn't be able to do anything. "Little animal, your trick is just child's play, can't reach the apex." A commanding elder of the Extreme Yang School spoke coldly after seeing the two formations working as planned. A high elder from this sect coldly uttered, "Killing our Immaculate Expanse disciples is deserving of 10,000 deaths." Be damned. At this time, they felt that Li Qiye couldn't do anything against the two formations even if he had other means. He was a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be killed. It is too difficult for one person to shake a lineage. Someone murmured while staring at a heavenly mirror. A royal lord said with worry, "The Expanse, the Extreme Young School, and the teeming fish are quite scary when they are working together. It looks like Li Qiye is really pushing them this time." An ancestor lamented, "What a shame, this is a hero. The human race will lose such a good seed. This is what happens when you are too brittle and inflexible." His future was unlimited, but he was too arrogant and made too many enemies at once. This is him walking to his death. "Little beast, today will be your funeral." A fish king shouted, "Brothers, rush into Peacock Land. No dangers will deter our advance. We shall devour the entire land and tear this little beast into pieces." Devour the land. Tear the little beast into pieces. The army chanted in unison. Their battle cry shook even the stars in the sky. Endless streams of teeming fish rushed for Peacock Land. At this moment, nothing Li Qiye did could deter their determination to destroy him. They were still far from reaching the land itself, but their momentum was already impacting the entire land. Li Chia showed no sign of worry and instead revealed a beaming smile. That was just for fun, now it is time for the real harvest. Having said that, a buzz resounded. The peacock tree behind him suddenly emitted a blinding light of all kinds of colors. This divine light soared to the sky and overfilled the sky vault. It opened the 9 heavens and derived a timeless primordial chaos. What's happening? This sudden change caught everyone off guard. This light turned into a huge tail. The peacock tree suddenly disappeared from sight. A huge peacock emerged in the sky. Its wings blotted out the sun, suddenly turning the world dark. All that remained was the brilliance of the peacock and its 5 colors. The entire Jade Sea was illuminated by this 5-colored divine light. Whoosh! The peacock spread its tail. In an instant, a truly invincible aura pervaded the entire heaven spirit world. There were no laws or moves, just the spreading of the bird's tail suppressed all living beings. Even powerful paragons and terrifying god monarchs felt that they were mere ants before this invincible aura. They were too fragile and couldn't reach the apex. Buzz! The peacock's tail swept by and the billion teeming fish were suppressed. Both the extreme yang cauldron and the law-evading sword formation were stopped as well. At this moment, neither paragons or the powerful formations could move at all, they were completely pinned down. Even time and space were paused like a painting. The High Elders had become part of the blood, so they were destroyed as well. Splash! Li Chia poured all of the void imperfection water into the law-avoiding sword formation. The High Elders from the expanse that set up this formation could only watch themselves being drowned by it. Void imperfection water, the supreme sacred aqua of the charming spirits. Many people were envious to see Li Chia using so much water to drown out the sword formation. They felt that he was being too wasteful. For charming spirits, even a single bottle of this water was extremely precious, but Li Chia ignored all of that. Clank! The High Elders had lost control of their sword formation. The formation turned into an incomparably holy giant lotus. This was the ultimate form of this formation, capable of purifying and evading everything. Splash! The void imperfection water turned into a cauldron inside the lotus flower. At this moment, the purifying force of the formation was being pushed to the limit. The recently refined lake of blood was being sucked into this new cauldron. The lotus flower closed its petals and the blood was refined once more. Moreover, the High Elders stuck inside felt their fate palaces opening. Their spring of life continuously flowed into the cauldron and was being thoroughly refined. Their blood energy, longevity blood, and Tao force were gathered into their spring of life, and its water continued to pour outside. Their fate ended up being the same as the elders from the extreme Yang school, slowly melting away. Even though this process didn't look that scary, they were being robbed of everything. It drained their entire being and left behind nothing. Using the fire of life to warm the blood and the water of life to purify it, nothing can be better than this. Li Chia smiled while controlling the cauldron. It would have been too cruel if I had to catch dozens of experts to refine them alive into this medicine, right? Unfortunately, you all didn't heed my warning and decided to come seek death by turning yourselves into medicine. The even bigger coincidence is that the extreme Yang cauldron and the law-evading sword formation are quite suitable for medicine creation. The merit laws created by your grand completion immortal physique users consist of unrivaled hardness and peerless softness. Coming here to be part of my medicine creation, what else can I say? Thank you for helping me save a lot of time. Li Chia leisurely explained the process while refining the blood. After seeing this, an ancestor from the Void Imperfection School wondered, is this really a coincidence? Eventually, the lotus flower withered and the blood was tempered once more. At this time, it no longer looked like blood, its appearance was closer to a treasure liquid. It exuded a wondrous light. Earlier, there was a lake of blood, but now this liquid was reduced to the size of a pond. There was primordial chaos lingering inside this pond, as if a world of stars was about to be born within. An entire universe was being gestated. This kind of treasure liquid can really compare to chaos essence. Many people were salivating while looking at this liquid. Even those without a clue still knew how precious it was. This was a liquid refined from 1 billion teeming fish. Its value could only be imagined. Li Chia took out the heaven vine calabash and began to cut it. An ordinary golden liquid poured out from inside, releasing a vibrant force of life. Each drop of this golden liquid contained infinite vigor. He added this golden liquid into the pond. Buzz! The two instantly fused together. At this time, everyone in the Jade Sea could feel a breeze full of exuberant life force hitting them. There seemed to be an extremely vigorous life being born in this pond of water, capable of taking root in the earth. Countless existences in the Jade Sea felt the great vitality being created. Even a dying piece of dry wood would have a second spring. He is actually replenishing the life of the peacock tree so it can live longer. An ancestor was dazed in front of their mirror. They finally understood what Li Chia was trying to do. Countless spectators were astounded, some were moved, and many were silenced. Prior to this, someone had asked what Li Chia was trying to do, and he answered truthfully. At that time, many people mocked and snorted at him. They viewed him with disdain and thought that this fool didn't know his own limits. Eventually, a very ancient forefather noticed a clue and murmured, "It is not that the punishment can't reach it. There is something protecting it that is untouchable, even by the heavens' will. An impregnable law. What kind of law or item can't be shaken even by the will of the high heavens?" A junior was very curious. Li Chia sneered and coldly uttered towards the heavens' punishment, "Will of the high heavens. Damned old heavens, don't forget, there are a few things that even the heavens can't violate. Many things can be destroyed or concealed, but not the truth observed by the world itself. These are the tears of countless mortals, the love and sympathy for all lives. The heavens cannot change this. Damned old man, come down yourself if you dare, your will alone cannot change this order." Li Chia mockingly laughed at the incapable heavens' punishment. However, the constant barrage of the punishment failed to make contact. Even the will of the high heavens cannot touch this law. Just what the hell is it? A very ancient ancestor was astounded after seeing this. Li Chia smiled and declared, "Very well, my turn." With that, he opened his fate palace and the pillar of life emerged. At this time, a branch from the peacock tree stretched out and propped behind Li Chia's back. Its 5-colored light illuminated his body. A tree appeared behind him like a peacock spreading its beautiful tail. Boom! This pillar of life fiercely penetrated the heavens' punishment. The tribulation responded by sending more lightning bolts straight at Li Chia to tear him apart. However, the 5-colored barrier behind him stopped all of the bolts from coming close to him. Even though this barrier was cracked, the peacock tree once again exuded its light to make the barrier whole. This tribulation was aimed at Li Chia, so it was much weaker compared to the previous one. The peacock tree was powerful enough to shield Li Chia. The pillar of life was inside the sea of lightning. Runes emerged from it to form a symbol as it spread its Tao. This was the ancient void rune. Li Chia then relied on it to crazily absorb the lightning and thunder of the tribulation until it ran dry. This is crazy. People watching from their mirrors couldn't believe their eyes. This brat is insane. He is using the peacock tree to help him squeeze out the punishment's power. Since the start of time, how many people actually dared to seize this power for their own? An ancestor applauded this bold action. Everyone was speechless after seeing this. Even though the tree was protecting him from the tribulation, he dared to send his own pillar of life into the punishment itself. Not too many people would dare to take such a risk. Eventually, the lightning slowly disappeared. The thunder died down since the field up in the sky had been sucked dry by Li Chia. Thus, the tribulation vanished. His pillar of life had turned purple. Even though others couldn't see it, they could still feel its power after absorbing enough from the tribulation. A mighty power was now contained within. Once the pillar returned, the spring, tree, and cauldron of life all resonated with each other. The new power of the pillar allowed them to benefit as well. The life origination was melting faster inside his spring of life. The augmentation thanks to the tribulation allowed the spring to become strong enough to dissolve this drop. He recalled his fate palace and sat down at the base of the peacock tree. He closed his eyes and began to rest by channeling his energy. A great risk bears a great harvest. An ancestor muttered, "It doesn't matter whether this human boy is strong or not, he utilized this rare timing to steal the heaven's punishment, so he'll enjoy this great benefit for the rest of his life. He is quite lucky to have been protected by the peacock tree and allowed to obtain the power of the tribulation." A descendant of a great power became quite jealous. "Look, a new branch is forming on the peacock tree." Someone noticed a new development through their heavenly mirror. Many turned to look as well. Sure enough, on top of the old roots of the peacock tree, a new green branch that carried unlimited vitality appeared. A successful life replenishment. This is way too heaven-defying. Even ancestors gasped before this scene. He has actually revived a nearly withered ancestral tree. This is incredible. A dying ancestor enviously spoke. The peacock tree really obtained a rebirth from this. After this, even if it can't live for another lifetime, it can definitely survive another 8 or 10 generations, maybe even longer. Many people knew that once a tree father returned to the earth, it was the same as returning to the origin. They would no longer have their own intelligence, no longer be able to communicate with others. So even if the tree was the one that planned all of this, how did it communicate with Wuxia? There is only one possibility. A great character from another tree father's lineage answered, he must be a controller. Wuxia is the peacock tree's controller. Only controllers are able to communicate with ancestral trees. A tree controller, An ancestor murmured, it is very difficult for a tree father's lineage to produce a controller. In the legends, even the Golden Owl only had one controller. No matter what, the peacock tree has carried out the life replenishment successfully. The sect master enviously spoke, Peacock Land has finally been saved. Since this land wasn't destroyed, it remains a tree father's continent. Anyone or any lineage would covet it. Unfortunately, the land has only accepted humans even till this point. It didn't grant entrance to the 3 great races for millions of years, so only humans settled down at Peacock Land. While others were discussing the great blood refinement, the void imperfection 3 schools who had more information was quiet. Compared to the speculating ancestors, they knew who actually did it. However, they didn't wish to discuss certain matters with others. Or rather, they weren't willing to share this crucial information with outsiders. As for someone who was privy to everything, Kong Qinru chose to stay quiet as well by burying this matter deep in her heart. She wouldn't even disclose it to those closest to her. She didn't know how to feel about the whole endeavor. Should she be afraid of Wuxia's awe-inspiring means or sympathize with the death of a billion teeming fish? Perhaps she should be excited about the successful life replenishment. Prior to this, she understood what Wuxia wanted to do from his implicative words, but she still made a choice to help carry out the terrible blood refinement. Like he said, there was no free lunch in this world. There would always be a great price to pay, and it wasn't something that she or the exquisite valley could afford. Some might say that the peacock tree and Wuxia were too cruel by carrying out the blood ceremony. It was a vicious plundering of life. Alas, even more were happy. For many cultivators and sects, the disappearance of a billion teeming fish carried great significance. It meant that the territories of the seas were freed up. This would be a great and long feast for many marine kingdoms and tribes in the upcoming days. An expert stated, since the start of time, supreme experts have always marched through countless bones, so it is no big deal that the peacock tree sacrificed a billion fish for its own life. This is a world of the strong, and the peacock tree stands at the top. Even if it devours all of the teeming fish, it is completely understandable. At this time, the majority believed that this blood ceremony came from the peacock tree. Well, yes, The Jade Sea will be much more peaceful without these teeming fish. More resources have been freed up for the other tribes and lineages. They would have been purged already if it wasn't for their swift reproductive capabilities. Maybe there will be more room for growth out of this. Many sects were applauding this development. No one even thought that it was too drastic. In their opinion, these fish were the locusts of the sea. They crazily multiplied and took up too much room. Many sects had been dissatisfied with them, but they couldn't do anything out of fear of the fish's great numbers. Now, they were refined by the peacock tree and lost around 70 to 80% of their forces. Perhaps in all the corners of the oceans, one would find it difficult to find a lineage unhappy about this development outside of the teeming fish themselves. The truth was that many marine sects and kingdoms had taken swift action to occupy the territories of the teeming fish. In just one night, war raged across the oceans as people vied for resources. Until now, the teeming fish had taken too many territories in the marine regions, so today, outside of capturing resources, various tribes and lineages also wanted revenge since the teeming fish robbed them of it in the past. Chapter 12:23. Quiet aftermath. Peacock Land was still very quiet. The day came and went with no one daring to enter. They were afraid of the peacock tree's wrath and another terrible blood refinement. Li Qia also enjoyed the calm and peace during this period of time. In fact, many people had shifted their attention to the wars for territories and resources. The majority of the sects and kingdoms were busy waging battles in the teeming fish's marine regions. They didn't have the time or energy to enter Peacock Land. At the same time, the teeming fish became a dog with a dead owner overnight. They were ganged up on by almost everyone. The breeze gently blew under the peacock tree. At this time, it looked completely different with verdant leaves. It emitted an exuberant aura after the replenishment. It was clear that it would be able to live for a long time. Li Qia's harvest was quite sizable as well. He was able to devour the heaven's punishment, giving him the ability to solve the problem of the life origination. He was quite content with his gains since he was only missing one out of the 4 mysteries of the Fate Palace. Currently in his possession were the ancient Void Rune, the Heavenly Tao's primal chapter, and the life origination. If he could gather the final piece, it would be nearly complete for him. He eventually opened his eyes after a while, feeling quite comfortable with a strange sensation due to the great vitality, similar to a rebirth. While glancing around, he noticed an exquisite jade table in front of him and a stove with smoke curling out of it. There was also the sound of burning wood. On top of the table was boiling spring water at just the right temperature. The water was heated right when he woke up. A pair of gentle porcelain hands were preparing tea with a pot and cup. All the movements were quite smooth and natural, showing great mastery. Li Qia took note of the master of these hands. It was a charming beauty. Even though she was still a maiden, she already had the sexiness of a mature woman, like a ripe peach that others couldn't help but want a taste of. Who could it be besides the schoolmaster of the Sacred Spring School, Zhuo Jianshi? She sat in a proper position while pouring tea for Li Qia. This gentle and docile demeanor made her look like a newlywed bride. He only smiled and took the jade cup, taking his time to sip the tea without saying anything. After he finished, she poured another cup for him with the same grace. At this time, Kong Qinru appeared on the peak and stood there quietly. Zhuo Jianshi noticed her arrival and put down the teapot, then quietly left. She didn't say a word from start to finish. Kong Qinru came forward and kneeled before Li Qia. Being the Valley Lord didn't diminish the respect she showed him. She looked at him and said, "Young noble, I'm afraid I have to go back. The sect has summoned me." Li Qia smiled and replied, "Go, a feast is about to begin." Many lands have lost their master with continuous wars being waged. The exquisite valley requires you to preside over these matters, so of course you will have to leave. She added, "If there is more news about the person you are trying to find, the valley will let you know right away." He only nodded without saying anything else. Eventually, she asked, "When will we meet again?" She knew that he was only passing through the heaven spirit world. There was nothing here that could make him feel sentimental. We will meet again if it is meant to be. He smiled. You have a great ambition, a drive for change. Keep on trying, one can only be successful through perseverance. Dreams alone will not accomplish anything. She responded in all seriousness, I will engrave your guidance in my heart. He nodded again and continued to drink his tea. The steam coming out from the cup seemed to be covering his face, causing Kong Qinru to stare at him in a daze. It was as if he was hiding in the mist. No one could see through his unfathomable self. Eventually, he looked at her and asked, anything else? She hesitated for a moment before answering, Schoolmaster Zhua is quite exceptional. The Sacred Spring School was initially in a marriage pact with our exquisite valley. The schoolmaster's fiancé was my first brother. Unfortunately, he died from misfortune before the two of them could marry. Schoolmaster Zhua has been living as a widow for his sake. This can only be praised as having great loyalty and virtue. What are you doing? Li Qie couldn't help but laugh before shaking his head. Are you trying to find a wife or a concubine for me? Or perhaps a bed-warming maid? I wouldn't dare. She said in a serious manner, I was only afraid that you might have misunderstood. Li Qie gently waved his sleeve and said, don't worry, nothing can elude my gaze or trick my mind. She took a deep breath and respectfully bade farewell. Young noble, I hope that we can meet again. I will not let you down in the future. With that, she drifted away and disappeared. Li Qie looked down to continue drinking his tea. After a good while, Zhuo Jianshi eventually returned to the side. She poured more tea for him in the same natural manner. Inside the tea's mist, he looked at her and leisurely smiled. Is this your own will, or is it the hope of the old geezers from your 3 schools? She only quietly sat there. It seemed that she would always be incredibly elegant and mature. This kind of noble grace made her even more attractive. If I can follow young noble, it will be our 3 schools' honor. Her soft voice was especially pleasant. He smiled and said, what do you want? Or rather, what does your Sacred Spring School want? A whale rider or an imperial seed? She pondered for a bit before softly answering, young noble, what are you willing to give us? He leisurely responded, I don't need to leave behind anything for your 3 schools. In fact, I don't owe you anything, it is the other way around. The truth was that Li Qie simply didn't want to care about these matters in this generation. Even though he was friends with immortal Emperor Wu Go, he didn't need to protect the void imperfect 3 schools and definitely didn't need to leave anything behind for them. After hearing this, she gently sighed with a slight frown on her beautiful face. Even this expression had its own charm. Others couldn't help but want to make her happy again. Li Qie continued to sip on his tea. In his eyes, all of this was as ephemeral as the wind and clouds. Eventually, he suggested, if, say, I want you to warm my bed since the only thing I want from your school is you, will you agree? She contemplated for a bit before looking straight at him while giving a sincere response. Young noble, if you fancy me, it would be my honor. Li Qie laughed and shook his head. I am not someone who likes to force others. She might be unwilling, but I'm not. A coquettish voice came about at this time. I want to follow you and stay by your side, young noble. This voice was particularly enchanting and could steal someone's soul away. Just by hearing it, one would imagine that it was a very charming woman. A woman fluttered closer with the wind. Before even seeing her appearance, one would already be enraptured by her. Each of her steps was quite graceful, like a willow leaf amidst the breeze. Her ethereal bearing would draw countless uncontrollable gazes. She stood before Li Qie while dressed in a black robe that couldn't hide her peerlessly beautiful posture. Her willow-like waist was apparent through the thin, silky cloth. Her bottom half had perfectly round buttocks that were accentuated even more by the black cotton yarn. A dark gossamer top hid her well-rounded breasts. Very few brushes could capture their soul-stirring gorgeousness. It was indeed a difficult endeavor to describe them with words. In particular, they would sway in an astonishing manner with each of her steps. This was truly not for the faint of heart. She came before Li Qie and deeply bowed. my name is Lu Ruyan, nice to meet you, young noble. She was very close to him. An intoxicatingly pleasant smell was carried by the wind. In this close proximity, one would suddenly have the illusion that they were embracing her while basking in her delightful fragrance. Chapter 12:24. The woman ahead had her face hidden behind a black veil. Regardless, just by looking at her graceful and slender figure that was accentuated by magnificent curves on top of her barely visible valley was more than enough to fill the heart with euphoria. Zhuo Jianshi slightly frowned while sitting at the table after seeing this woman. However, she still maintained her elegance and calmness before speaking. Little sister Lu, do the elders know that you are here? Lu Ruyan let out a charming smile capable of inciting lust. She didn't mind Zhuo Jianshi's question. Who among the elders doesn't know that I love to interfere with your business? It wouldn't be good if they knew I was here. Zhuo Jianshi had expected this answer, so what else could she say? Li Qia was still hidden behind the curling steam rising from his teacup as he looked at her and chuckled. The descendants of the Lu clan are all femme fatale. It looks like you have also inherited your ancestors' bewitching abilities. This is indeed a great disaster for all living beings. Moreover, it looks like your evil devourer graceful law is not bad either. Your clan is a bit interesting to have this variation of the heaven devourer evil physique. Young noble, you speak as if only our Lu clan specializes in seduction. Many people in the heaven spirit world call the women of our clan vixens. She chuckled while staring at him in a bold and direct fashion. Li Qia laughed after hearing this. Well, the women from your clan are indeed vixens, including your progenitor. Even though people say that she was a grand completion immortal physique user, she couldn't complete the heaven devourer evil physique and instead ended up with this type of seductive physique. She was a beautiful temptress of the 9 worlds that drove countless men crazy. I am honored to hear such praise from you, young noble. She covered her mouth while laughing. Despite being covered by a veil, her eyes could pass on amorous feelings. When she stared at Li Qia, they were luminous with autumn ripples. Li Qia shook his head and smiled. Girl, there is still a long way to go if you want to seduce me. Try again after you reach grand completion with your physique. With the skill you have right now, you are only embarrassing yourself. Lu Ruyan wasn't offended at all. She gave a charming smile and said, since you say so, when I reach grand completion, I'll try to see if I can get you into my red curtains. Take me into your red curtains? Li Qia was quite amused. You can almost qualify to be mine alone, but for me to marry you. Don't dwell on this idea. So you are saying that I still have a chance? She flirted with a seductive chuckle. It was just as Li Qia had said, this woman was definitely a vixen. Zhuo Jianshi was still calmly sitting nearby despite Lu Ruyan's flirtatious behavior. Her mature and elegant charm would make others palpitate in a different manner. Li Qia only smiled back at Lu Ruyan. He looked over at Zhuo Jianshi and asked, who is in charge of the Void Imperfection 3 schools right now? So it turned out that Lu Ruyan was the current schoolmaster of the Evil Devourer School. However, the Evil Devourer School and the Sacred Spring School had a very interesting relationship due to the intricate relationship between their 2 physique laws. The physique law of the Sacred Spring School was the Surging Golden Spring Law, while the Evil Devourer School's law was the Evil Devourer Graceful Law. One cultivated into the Sacred Spring physique while the other the Heaven Devourer Evil physique. The schools had 3 immortal physique laws. In addition to the 2 previously mentioned, the third was the Void Imperfection physique law. Originally, these 3 should have nothing to do with each other. The Void Imperfection physique was from the word pure in the physique scripture. The Sacred Spring physique originated from the word soft, while the Heaven Devourer Evil physique came from the word yin. However, Immortal Emperor Wu Go couldn't obtain the physique scripture, thus his physique law was taught to him by a predecessor. In the end, he created the Void Imperfection Windchase law. This physique law created by the emperor was naturally weaker than the one in the scripture. Because of this, it also included some other things. Inside this Windchase physique law were essences of pureness and softness. From this, future descendants had different interpretations. During the era of the Sacred Spring School's progenitor, this person was able to understand the mysteries of the Windchase Law's softness to create the surging Golden Spring Law. Furthermore, because pureness originated from softness, it meant that softness also carried the yin affinity. In order to make this immortal physique law even purer to avoid qi deviation during cultivation, the Sacred Spring progenitor forcefully changed this physique law and removed the softness within the yin affinity. It was precisely this need for constant correction in order to successfully train the surging Golden Spring Law that gave birth to the evil devourer graceful law later on. It started with a female disciple. She was a femme fatale level beauty with a rebellious nature. She looked down on this correction, so she chose to go in the opposite direction of the surging Golden Spring Law. Her aptitude was very scary. Her reverse derivation of the immortal physique law had even surpassed her predecessors. She understood the word yin and created the evil devourer graceful law. Because the graceful law was derived from the Golden Spring Law, the future Sacred Spring and evil devourer schools would often mess with each other. The Sacred Spring School believed that the graceful law came from the surging Spring Law, so their law was stronger. On the other hand, the evil devourer school believed that their graceful law was the result of surpassing the limit of the surging Spring Law, so their law could replace the former. Of course, there was no result to this competition because the two schools had never produced another person that could reach grand completion, let alone one for each physique at the same time. However, they saw hope in this generation with Zhuo Jianshi and Lu Ruyan. They were both extremely talented and cultivated their respective physique laws. The Void Imperfection 3 schools felt that they could finally see two grand completion immortal physique users in this generation. If this was the case, then the Sacred Spring School and Evil Devourer School could have a chance to see which was stronger. Therefore, when the two girls were only ordinary disciples, they often clashed. And the competition didn't end after they became schoolmasters. Whenever they were together, a fight would surely break out. One could say that this was their fate, the reason for their continuous struggle until their final showdown at grand completion. Of course, it was not a life and death fight for these two. After all, they were still sisters from the same sect. She revealed a lovable smile and said, "Though Sister Zhuo is older than me by half a generation, if we are talking about the leader of the Void Imperfection 3 schools, then it can't be anyone but me." Zhuo Jianshi calmly answered, "The current leader of the 3 schools is first brother." The first brother Zhuo Jianshi mentioned was the schoolmaster of the Void Imperfection branch because he was the oldest in their generation and had joined the sect the earliest. In the school, many of the disciples had been taught by him before. Thus, he was not only their first brother, but also their master of sorts. Lu Ruyan chuckled in response, "Sister Zhuo, first brother has been talking about stepping down so the role will fall onto one of our shoulders in the future, but I feel that I am much more suitable than you." Her claim was not because she wanted to seize power and take control of the Void Imperfection 3 schools, it was because the two of them had grown accustomed to competing with each other since the early days. It was not a good thing for the two to meet since it would always end with either Zhuo Jianshi challenging Lu Ruyan or the other way around. Zhuo Jianshi sat there, neither supporting nor retorting to Lu Ruyan's claim. Her demure and mature aura were truly special. Li Qia asked after finishing another cup, "What are you here for?" Zhuo Jianshi poured another cup for him, as if this had always been the case. Lu Ruyan smiled coquettishly in response, "To steal Sister Zhuo's man. I heard the ancestors have high hopes for her and I feel that I am not lesser in any way, so why can't I vie for her lover as well?" Such provocative words were let out in an incredibly trivial manner. Lu Ruyan had no semblance of a bashful girl. "Oh." Li Qia looked at her and smilingly replied, "That's not necessarily the case. Perhaps I prefer gentle and virtuous women. I have never claimed otherwise." Lu Ruyan sat down next to him with a soul-stealing allurement. "These are two different matters. Young noble, you can like virtuous women and still have a taste for a seductive beauty. These two things aren't mutually exclusive, right? A little interesting, you are indeed a descendant of the Lu clan." Li Qia was not shaken by her bewitching Chapter 12:25. Three women competing for one groom. Li Qie glanced at her and said, "Who knows, maybe I am a little eccentric, wanting only what I can't have and have a distaste for things that come too easily. That's not a problem either." Lu Rian smiled back. "Many things can slowly change. As long as you stay with me, you will come to find that I will not disappoint you. Maybe you will like me then." "Possible." Li Qie had an amused glimmer in his eyes as he stared at her, "But maybe I am someone who has a penchant for someone else's wife. A little girl like you is not attractive to me." "Young noble, are you saying that you wish to embrace both me and Sister Joie and take your time savoring us?" Lu Rian winked seductively and smiled. "That's perfect, I will help you. Maybe I can even train Sister Joie to be more sexy and obedient in her service." She spoke in an incredibly natural manner with a touch of naughtiness that added to her charm. Li Qie laughed and gently shook his head. "If your Void Imperfection 3 schools wants to use the honey trap against me, I can only say that your geezers really don't understand me." Lu Rian faintly smiled in response. "I don't know whether the ancestors told Sister Joie to tempt young noble or not, but I definitely didn't receive this order. Of course, if she wants you to stay at the Sacred Spring School, then I must win you over." Zhuo Jianshi frowned after hearing this. She replied, "Sister Lu, this is not a personal issue between us two. If you want to invite young noble to the Evil Devourer School as a guest, then I wouldn't object and would even be excited for you. If he is willing to stay at our 3 schools because of you, then you would become a great contributor to our school." "Sister Joie, you are mistaken." Lu Rian shook her head. "I don't care about becoming a great contributor, I simply want to steal your man. I still can't understand why you always listen to those old geezers' arrangements for the sake of the Void Imperfection 3 schools. Do you really think you can sacrifice everything for this goal?" She continued on, "For me, my path is below my feet. Each person should walk their own path. If Sister wants to keep him behind out of your own volition, then I am fine with it, but if it is for the Void Imperfection 3 schools, then I will definitely take him from you." Meanwhile, Li Qie continued to drink his tea in a carefree manner as if this had nothing to do with him. After saying her piece, she looked at Li Qie and playfully winked. "Are you not angry at what I said, young noble?" Li Qie only smiled and continued to drink his tea. "Bah, 2 shameless vixens daring to seduce my husband." At this time, a fiery shout rang from the distance. A woman came from the sky. No, to be more accurate, it was a little girl with flowers blooming from each of her steps. She came barefoot on these fresh flowers like a descending goddess. Li Qie looked over and smilingly shook his head after seeing the girl. "Hey! Does your Void Imperfection 3 schools have no shame? You are schoolmasters yet you too are trying to seduce my husband, how shameful." Yi Xiaoxiao stepped under the peacock tree with both hands posturing on her thin waist, glaring at Lu Rian and Zhuo Jianshi. "Oh! Little sister, you are too young to be this anxious for marriage." Lu Rian chuckled. "Trying to find a husband at this young age is a little shameful, don't you think?" Yi Xiaoxiao maintained her powerful glare. "Who is being shameless here?" "Humph, you are trying to seduce someone else's husband in broad daylight. You are the ones throwing your face away." Zhuo Jianshi shook her head after seeing the fierce girl and answered gracefully, "Princess Yi, you are mistaken. You have yet to marry young noble Li, so you can't claim that he is your husband. I'm afraid this is your one-sided belief." "That's true." Lu Rian chuckled provocatively. "Little sister, he would be your husband once you two are married. You must be too little to understand this. Your head is little." Yi Xiaoxiao quickly retorted, "You dare to steal my husband? I'm going to teach you a lesson." This girl had no qualms at all and casually prepared to attack. With a buzz, a wooden sword appeared. This wooden sword seemed to be made from thousands of divine swords as its sword energy was absolutely frightening. With a clank, countless swords slashed vertically towards Lu Rian and Zhuo Jianshi. "Hey, are you really attacking?" Lu Rian smiled and reached forward. Her fingers turned into a phoenix that soared towards the numerous divine slashes. Meanwhile, Zhuo Jianshi remained seated there, proud and completely fearless. She simply waved her sleeve and swept away Yi Xiaoxiao's wave of swords. Humph. Think I'm afraid? Even if you two come together, I'll still beat you down into submission. Yi Xiaoxiao shouted and waved her hand. Divine trees materialized and formed a formation to trap the other two women. After seeing Yi Xiaoxiao becoming serious, both Lu Ruyan and Zhuo Jianshi didn't want to underestimate their opponent. They stood up at the same time before roaring as they leapt towards the trees. Bang! 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 With both of them attacking, Yi Xiaoxiao was definitely at a disadvantage. After all, they were older than her and they both trained in immortal physiques, so they were no joke. Xiaoxiao was still young, so it wasn't easy for her to go one-on-two. Her divine trees couldn't entrap these two. Sister Zhuo, if the two of us pick on little sister Yi, people will laugh at us. Lu Ruyan smiled. You do you, I won't fight together with you. With that, she pointed her sword at Zhuo Jianshi. Zhuo Jianshi was no slouch either, despite her graceful bearing. As a schoolmaster, there were times when she needed to be aggressive as well. Thus, she unleashed a divine seal and said, I also want to see if you have improved recently. I'm going to teach both of you a lesson. Yi Xiaoxiao didn't show any weakness. She summoned a huge vine that turned into a giant that joined her in fighting the other women. The dueling ladies shouted at the same time and retaliated against the gigantic vine. Very shortly, the fight became a brawl with no one giving an inch. The fight rushed into the sky. Not bad at all. Li Qia clapped while watching this duel. The three neither held back nor did they care for his praise. Even the vault of the sky was being shattered by their attacks. They could be described as kingdom-toppling beauties. When they really went at it, it was a very beautiful sight to behold. Three supreme beauties fighting so viciously for a man. This man is too blessed. A groan came about. A wooden boat landed on Peacock Peak. It didn't matter whether it was land or sea, the boat could easily travel through all terrain. A young man with a dashing appearance was sitting in this boat. He wore an ivory-colored robe and was in great spirits. There was a hint of maturity in his demeanor as well. He watched the three women fighting in the sky and enviously told Li Qia, when will I become as lucky as you, brother? To be able to make the sacred spring schoolmaster, the evil devourer schoolmaster and the little princess of the golden owl fight each other, such romantic luck is truly enviable. Li Qia only smiled in response and continued to watch the fight. This little brother is Bu Zhanfeng. The youth cupped his fists and smiled at Li Qia. In my opinion, the three ladies won't be able to come to a conclusion anytime soon. Will you give me the honor of having a drink together? Li Qia looked at the youth and smiled back before taking one last glance at the girls. Then, he stepped onto the boat and sat down. Go. Bu Zhanfeng laughed and said, Brotherly, sit tight. He then grabbed the paddle and began to row it as if through water. Swoosh. This wooden boat traveled at frightening speeds. It immediately shattered space and this sea region. All of a sudden, they were in the middle of a vast ocean. Li Qia sat there without asking Bu Zhanfeng about their destination. He simply enjoyed the scenic views along the way. Bu Zhanfeng was rowing his boat and looked at Li Qia before sincerely stating, I am full of admiration for Brother Li's intelligence. It seems that nothing in this world can shake your Dao heart. You are not bad as well. Li Qia lightly grinned. To be able to cultivate the Buzhan clan's martial arts to this level truly demonstrates your firm Dao heart. Chapter 1226. Bu Zhanfeng sighed after Li Qia revealed his identity. Brother Li is indeed a tree controller, you were able to see through me right away. For millions of years, those who have earned the favor of the ancestral trees have always been part of the most magnificent crowd. Today, you are no lesser than any of the old sages. So it turned out that Bu Zhanfeng was from the Buzhan clan, the descendants of immortal Emperor Buzhan. Outside of the heaven spirit world, the uninformed thought that the emperor was the one who founded this clan, but this was not the case. So, if you two stay together for a bit, maybe you will be attracted to each other and become something more. He was trying his best to sell his sister. Wuxia leisurely drank the wine and chuckled. This is our first meeting, yet you are introducing your sister to me already. Are you not afraid of pushing your sister into a fire pit? I'm not worried at all. The youth smiled back. What kind of people are the geezers from the Void Imperfection 3 schools? They're as crafty as ghosts and sly like foxes, and they want nothing more than to marry schoolmasters to you. The old men from the Golden Isle also want you for their groom. Since you are such a hot commodity, I can represent my sister and hook you two up without any apprehension. Wuxia laughed and shook his head since he didn't want to dwell on this topic. Forget the matter of grooms. However, if there is a chance, I do want to visit the Bujan clan to see the ancient scrolls left behind by your ancestors. Bujan Feng hurriedly replied, Brotherly, you are indeed special with extraordinary vision, ordinary people can't compare to you. They only want to see treasures and technique manuals at our clan, but you want to read the ancient books. He smiled and continued, It is no big deal if you want to read our books, just marry my big sis, then we'll be family. With my sis asking the ancestors asking in your stead, it will be very simple. You probably don't know, but my big sis is their favorite. The ancestors dote on her more than me, the successor. Wuxia helplessly waved his sleeve at Bujan Feng, who was not giving up on trying to sell his sister. Don't mention this again. I have zero interest. Okay. Bujan Feng had to drop it and smiled. Then I won't bring it up again. But I'm still confident that there is a lot of time left. There is still a chance for the two of you. Wuxia had to smile back since he understood that the charming spirit race had always been interested in the procreation of their race and stallions. In fact, he wasn't the only one lacking interest in this matter. Bujan Feng's older sister opposed this matter as well. Chapter 12:27. Origin of the Bujan clan. The two continued to drink their fine wine. Even though Bujan Feng came from an ancient clan, he was still very amiable and humorous to the point where others would hesitate to end the party. After another round, Bujan Feng put down his cup and said, Brotherly, this might be intrusive, so I don't know if I should ask or not. Wuxia nonchalantly said, Go ahead. Bujan Feng stated in a serious manner, In my humble opinion, Brotherly must not be from the heaven spirit world. Of course, if you don't want to talk about it, we'll just pretend that I didn't say anything. Wuxia took another sip and casually asked, What makes you say that? Brotherly, you are a hero in the contemporary, a dragon that will soar to the 9 heavens, destined to be a prominent god king. The youth smilingly answered, In my opinion, you didn't debut just now, and yet you are completely unknown in the heaven spirit world. Thus, I believe that you are not from here. Wuxia chuckled and glanced at the youth. It is no secret. You are right, I am from the mortal emperor world. Just as I thought. He patted his thigh triumphantly. I must be 80 to 90% right then. It looks like you have more to say. Wuxia narrowed his eyes and smirked at the boy. And here I thought you only wanted to introduce your sister to me. No, Brotherly. Don't misunderstand. Bujan Feng bowed to apologize with great sincerity. I really did ask you to come here so that I could introduce my big sis to you, but at the same time, I also wanted to ask a few questions. Wuxia slowly took another sip. After a good while, he said, Go ahead. This little brother wants to ask you about the Great Vortex. Bujan Feng hurriedly replied, Please teach me. Wuxia flatly said while squinting his eyes, It looks like you know a lot. No, of course not, this is pure speculation. Your appearance is too coincidental and was right around the time of the fluctuation from the vortex. Therefore, I came up with a bold guess, you must have gone there. Wuxia asked slowly, Do you have some intentions towards the vortex? Bujan Feng took a deep breath and earnestly spoke, I won't hide it from you. Brotherly, I am very concerned about the vortex. As the successor of the Bujan clan, this is also my responsibility. Perhaps you don't know about the origin of our clan, but I can let you know that there is a reason why we are here at the Heaven Spirit World. We are more closely connected to the vortex than any other lineage. I know a bit about this matter. Li Chia calmly revealed, your clan has always been linked to the vortex. Outsiders do not know the reason why, but the answer to this question traces back to the origin of your clan. You know? Bujan Feng was surprised because outsiders shouldn't know about this. Even some disciples in the clan were unaware. As the successor, he was privy to more information than his peers. Nevertheless, he still didn't know the secrets behind this relationship. There aren't many things that I don't know. Li Chia leisurely said, if your clan can understand your own beginning, then it will come to understand its relationship with the vortex. Moreover, it will also clear up the origin of your charming spirit race. Li Chia sipped his wine and leisurely said, in other words, if your Bujan clan's genealogy was a historical script, then it would be one about the history of the charming spirits. If there are blank spots in this race's history itself, then there will be answers within your clan. However, that is based on the premise that you can figure out your own origin first. Li Chia's words shocked Bujan Feng. He stared at Li Chia in astonishment and murmured, Brother Li, you know much more than I expected. To have such insight. It seems that I'm inferior in this aspect. It's nothing. When you go to many places, you will learn many things. Li Chia put down his cup again. Bujan Feng quickly refilled Li Chia's cup and continued the conversation in earnest. The truth is that I'm confused about many things as well. All of it seems to be hidden in a fog throughout history. So please, guide me out of this maze. Li Chia looked at him and answered, there's not much I can teach you. If you think I came this time for the vortex, then that would be wrong. I just happened to be passing by and played around a bit. After a while, he went on, if you want to ask me about what is at the bottom of the vortex, if there are things that relate to your clan or the charming spirits, then my answer is that I can't tell you. Li Chia plainly explained, the things there are also related to the origin of the sea demons and the final destination of the Treants. Just like the sea demons at the Bone Sea and the Divine Tree Ridge for the Treants, outsiders can't explain it to you. A true answer has to be figured out on your own. Bujan Feng murmured to himself, the Bone Sea and Divine Tree Ridge for those two races. Eventually, he looked up over at Li Chia and speculated out loud, are you saying that our origin is similar to the sea demons and Treants? No, you are off in this case. Li Chia smiled. Why is it that you charming spirits are considered the favored children of the heavens instead of the sea demons or Treants? Why is it that sea demons don't want to leave this world and the Treants will always return no matter what? There are many similarities, but the real reason, the true answers, are completely different. Bujan Feng began to ponder while murmuring, I think I'm seeing something here. When Treants die, they begin the process of atavism and take root in the earth. For generations, the sea gods also have to be accepted by the trident. Only with it would they be qualified to fight immortal emperors. This issue had been repeatedly explored for many generations. Why did Treants have to return to the heaven spirit world? Some said that even if they went to other places, they would come back to this world to die. Only by dying here would they be returning to their roots. As for the sea demons, everyone could understand that no other places in the 9 worlds were more suitable than the heaven spirit world. After all, the entire place was practically a vast ocean. Where would they rather go than here? However, something that was quite peculiar to many researchers was why sea demons didn't become immortal emperors and instead became sea gods. Another interesting thing was their most powerful artifact, one that could even suppress immortal emperors, the trident. What was the secret behind the trident? Where did this powerful weapon come from? Li Chia stared at the absent-minded boy and said, if a real answer is what you seek, then you must go to the vortex, it can give you the answer. Of course, you must get through it alive first. Go to the vortex? Bujan Feng took a deep breath and smiled wryly before shaking his head. I'm a very confident person, but I know I am not qualified to go to the vortex. That is beyond my abilities. Even if there are answers there, I would be torn asunder before reaching its end. If even God Kings can't do it, there's no way I could. If I remember correctly, your forefather, immortal Emperor Bujan, went there in the past. Li Qie smiled and slowly uttered, he is one of the few immortal emperors that was obsessed with the vortex, much more so than the other emperors. Bujan Feng was silent for a bit before eventually answering, I heard the ancestors say that our forefather really did go in there. According to legend, he actually made it to the bottom. Here, the youth helplessly shrugged before continuing, but when his venerableness came back from the vortex, he rarely talked about this matter. Nothing was said about what he saw down there, so our clan doesn't know much about the bottom of the vortex. It's not exactly difficult to find out more. Li Qie drank another cup. If I am not mistaken, your emperor left behind 2 top-secret imperial edicts. Open the second one and perhaps you can get some answers. How do you know that? Bujan Feng was frightened after hearing Li Qie. Like I said, there are very few things that I don't know. Li Qie nonchalantly stated, normally, immortal emperors would leave behind 1 imperial edict. If an emperor leaves behind 2, then the second one would entail a heaven-shattering matter relating to an eternal secret. It is not something the world should find out so easily, only real experts that have reached a certain level are qualified to learn it. Chapter 1228, Imperial Edict, How do you know so much? Bujan Feng became more and more frightened throughout this conversation. He was jolted into standing up and stared at Li Qie in disbelief. There were several types of imperial edicts. Some acted as proclamations to the world, others were orders given to the emperor's generals, and another type was meant to be kept in secrecy. These secret edicts were normally left for the emperor's descendants. Moreover, they were not to be opened unless the requirements were met. Otherwise, not even the children of the emperors could open them. Only talents that satisfied all the requirements would be able to open these secret edicts. Moreover, they would never disclose the contents to anyone, not even their closest friends and family. Li Qie ignored the apparent shock in the youth's expression. He sat there calmly and enjoyed the wine before speaking. Didn't I tell you already? There's not much that I don't know. Bujan Feng stared at Li Qie in disbelief. If it was anyone else, then they would be suspicious that Li Qie was spying on their clan. However, Bujan Feng knew that this wasn't possible. If he, as a disciple, didn't even know about it, how could an outsider figure it out? He took a deep breath and sat back down. While staring at Li Qie, he smiled wryly and shook his head. If Brother Li knows so many secrets already, you should also know that I'm not qualified to open the secret edict. If I could do so, I wouldn't be asking you right now. The level required to look at these edicts was usually the Immortal Emperor realm or something very close. Some said that Supreme God Kings could look at them as well, but the future generations didn't know if this was true or not. Li Qie laughed in response, I know that you are not qualified, but don't tell me that no one has seen it in your clan. This might fool others, but not me. Bujan Feng quietly pondered for a moment. There was indeed someone in the clan who was qualified to do so. However, they wouldn't necessarily disclose the contents to him. He revealed, we do indeed have someone qualified to read it, but this is not the right time. At the very least, this was the case for that ancestor. Li Qie gently shook his head, if your clan won't assist you in this matter, then I can't help you either. There are some things that you need to work for and, when necessary, you will need to break the rules. Bujan Feng gently sighed. After a brief pause, he looked at Li Qie and said in a serious manner, I know a little bit about the legends regarding the vortex and our charming spirit race, but I do have some questions. With that, his attitude became very respectful and sincere. Li Qie slowly sipped another mouthful of wine and said, Go ahead. Since I have drank your wine, I will think about answering if possible. Bujan Feng began, as I speculated, Brother Li has gone to the vortex. You also know that we have always been watching it. When one goes there, screams and roars seem to come from its depths. The world quakes before them, is this right? The boy was very careful with his words lest Li Chia became unhappy. Li Chia looked at the boy and said, I know what you want to ask. You are afraid of the beginning of some unwanted matters. Bu Zhanfeng nodded in response. I am indeed very worried about this. This is our clan's mission. There have been rumors that one day, the inevitable shall come and it will bring about a disaster to us charming spirits. It does exist. Li Chia said, however, this is a needless anxiety for you right now. You don't know that the charming spirits in this world have left certain things behind. This disaster won't be able to descend on a whim. With that, he stared at the youth and continued, in the heaven spirit world, the true power of the charming spirit race is beyond your imagination. And also, if your forefather, immortal Emperor Buzhan, was able to make his way down there, surely he would have left some precautionary measures behind. And here is the final statement. Li Chia raised his cup. I'll be borrowing an old saying, one might be able to survive an act of God, but no one can survive a self-brought calamity. One might be able to survive an act of God, but no one can survive a self-brought calamity. The youth carefully thought over this line from Li Chia. Okay, I have said all that needs to be said, drink up. Li Chia laughed and took another gulp. The youth calmed down and quickly poured another cup for him. Since Bu Zhanfeng insisted on him staying, Li Chia remained on the island. In these last few days, the youth came to ask Li Chia many questions. Whether he answered or not depended on his mood and the nature of the question. Bu Zhanfeng could be said to be a very studious person, someone who had no shame in asking and learning from even his own subordinates. His questions for Li Chia had nothing to do with cultivation or merit laws. The majority of them were interesting anecdotes. A person like him was quite rare. The Buzhan clan had an exceedingly high position in the heaven spirit world, so he, as the successor, had great authority. However, he had no visible arrogance or contempt for others. The majority of disciples from the great powers had some pride in them. Even if they didn't bully others, they wouldn't try to learn from those they deemed inferior. However, Bu Zhanfeng didn't feel that his intelligence was superior to others. He acted as a junior before Li Chia in his inquisitive quest for knowledge. It was precisely due to his commendable personality that Li Chia decided to teach him a thing or two. If it was another successor from a great power, Li Chia would have ignored him completely. The youth didn't give up on trying to set up his big sis with Li Chia, but regardless of his efforts, there was not the slightest sign of progress. His sister had no interest in this type of marriage or the bloodlines from stallions. She was even against it, so no matter how much Bu Zhanfeng tried to persuade her about how great Li Chia was, she remained aloof. Li Chia was even more tired of this matter and was too lazy to go see his sister. In the end, Bu Zhanfeng had no choice but to give up. He helplessly said, "Sigh, brotherly, I really do want you to be my brother-in-law. Then, we can be even closer, right?" Li Chia didn't want to be rude and only smiled at the boy's wish to connect the two. "Really, brotherly, everything about my big sis is great, it's just that she doesn't like to talk about marriage. She views interclan marriage as a type of transaction, but we do think that if you two stay together, you will be able to win her over with your charm. Trust me, girls will swoon over your charisma." The youth persuaded, "Let me arrange it so you two can have a talk under the moonlight." Li Chia gently shook his head. "People will meet if it is meant to be. If not, then it shouldn't be forced." Bu Zhanfeng sighed as another attempt at matchmaking failed. After several more days at the island, Bu Zhanfeng came and told Li Chia some news. "Brotherly, you said you wanted to go to the Dragon Demon Sea? There is news that I'm sure will interest you." Li Chia asked, "What news?" After staying here for a while, he had been wanting to leave the Jade Sea for the Dragon Demon Sea because Su Yonghuang had gone there. He wanted to see what clues she was after. Bu Zhanfeng quickly said, "I heard a skeletal horse has appeared in that region. It is only bones and keeps on running like crazy. No one knows where it came from. The cultivators there tried to capture it to no avail since it is way too fast. A god monarch from the sea demon race tried himself, but he still failed. Skeletal horse? Li Qia's eyes narrowed after hearing this. So you are interested. Bu Zhanfeng smiled after seeing Li Qia's demeanor. I heard it appeared in the southwest area, but before he could finish, Li Qia pointed in front of him. With a buzz, he opened a portal and disappeared inside. His sudden departure left Bu Zhanfeng speechless since he couldn't even say goodbye. At this time, a woman with a supreme appearance appeared by the door. This was a beauty that would cause others to be lost in admiration. Bu Zhanfeng asked after seeing the woman, "Sis, you are finally here, are you not angry anymore? He is a guest, after all. It would be very rude if I don't receive him at all after several days." Her voice was very pleasant. Bu Zhanfeng shrugged and said, "You're one step too late, sis. Brother Li has left already." Chapter 1229, Skeletal Horse. The Dragon Demon Sea was one of the three great oceans of the heaven spirit world. As for why it had this name, this remained a mystery for future generations. However, one particular legend was very popular. It stated that in an era too ancient to trace, there was a demon dragon with heaven-defying power. This demon dragon eventually evolved into a true dragon. It wanted to fight against the 9 heavens but ultimately failed. In the moment of its death, it fell into a great ocean and, from then on, that ocean was named the Dragon Demon Sea. Most people considered this as mere gossip for tea shops since no one could verify it. No one would go to research it either. There was a more reliable theory for this name. It believed that because sea demons ruled this sea and since dragons were the leaders of the sea demons, this area took on the name Dragon Demon Sea. This sea was quite vast with countless creatures and sections. In the heaven spirit world, if the Abyss Sea was the world of the charming spirits and the Jade Sea was the world of the Treants, then this region belonged to the sea demons. There were many powerful demon lineages here. For example, behemoths like the 7 Martial Pavilion or the Roaring Conch were the strongest. Today, this region was quite lively since many people were gossiping at various restaurants about a particular matter. A skeletal horse appeared out of nowhere and moved at extreme speeds. There were plenty of bizarre occurrences in the heaven spirit world, so a skeletal horse alone was not worthy of attention. The issue was its great speed. Many people tried to catch it to no avail. A sea demon at the god monarch level personally took action and still failed to keep up. Thus, the excitement built up as more and more were unable to catch the horse. The cultivators couldn't help but talk about it. Some believed that it had escaped from the Bone Sea. In their eyes, only that place would be able to produce such a steed. However, there were those who had a different opinion about it. For generations, no skeleton has been able to escape from the Bone Sea. Thus, this particular theory was too difficult to believe. However, if this was indeed the case, then the other question would be about the new and sudden changes at the Bone Sea. A blue ocean and blue sky with fish leaping out of the shallow surface while eagles soared high above. The breeze blew by, carrying a faint scent of salt water. This was surprisingly pleasant. Clock, 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 a crisp and rhythmic galloping broke this tranquil scene as a skeletal horse traveled on the sea's surface. However, it was way too fast. Ordinary people couldn't see it at all, only its dark afterimage was visible. Only those strong enough would be able to see its appearance. There was no flesh left on its pitch-black skeleton, as if it was dyed to this color. Each bone emitted a black mist that formed long lines when it sped faster. The result was something like a landscape painting. Despite its current dreadful appearance, judging by its build, it was definitely wonderful when it was still alive. Even calling it a divine steed would not be enough. Buzz! A portal opened and Li Qia walked out. He stood in the sky, looking at the horse running across the sea. A terrifying glint shot out from his eyes. Li Qia uttered to himself, "What is that girl looking for?" To even awaken the mount of immortal Emperor Bu Si. The girl he was referring to was Su Yonghuang. He smiled and transformed into another person. It was an unbelievably dashing youth that wore a gray robe. His body was shrouded by a gray mist, giving off an unfathomable appearance just like a bottomless abyss. Buzz! His inner physique emerged. In this split second, he pushed the soaring immortal physique to the limit and soared outside with incomparable speed. The skeletal horse galloped through the sea. Not long after, it saw a young man shrouded in a gray mist standing on the sea. It immediately stopped in front of the youth. Despite how fast it was going, not one drop of water was splashed. The youth smiled and rubbed its skull. I have just been reborn, yet you have found me already. Nay. It raised its front hooves and cheered with great excitement. After neighing, it intimately shoved its head under the palm of the young man. However, just a moment later, a red light flashed in its empty eye sockets. With a long cry, both of its front legs kicked forward at the young man with lightning speed without holding anything back. Boom! The youth was instantly blown away and plowed a deep trench on the sea's surface. Nay! The horse let out an intimidating cry before galloping into the sky, disappearing once again. Splash! The youth jumped out of the sea. He shook his head and returned to his true form. This was Wuxia, of course. Wuxia looked towards the direction of the horse and slowly said, "Incredible, luckily I came prepared or I would have become meat paste under its hooves." Earlier, he took the appearance of the young immortal Emperor Wuxia in order to trick the horse. In the beginning, it was indeed successful. Alas, the horse was a divine item, so it saw through the disguise. Wuxia murmured, "Wuxia, what did you leave behind back then?" According to legend, the emperor could be reborn again and again. But in the end, he was the only emperor known by the entire world to have collapsed, the only one whose final whereabouts were clear. Many of them were shrouded in mist, so no one could catch a glimpse of its true appearance. Such a grand mountain range stretched across the sea. From a distance, it looked like a huge dragon occupying this sea region. It was a very magnificent scene that made other people realize their own insignificance. Flying in the sky, Wuxia saw it from far away. He murmured, "Giant Dragon Mountain Range." So many years have passed, yet the scenery remains without the slightest change. He was lost in reminiscence, with many events of the past flashing by. Memories buried deep in his mind resurfaced one after another. The smiles and sounds of the past were vivid, as if he was suddenly back there. All of the happy scenes seemed to have happened just yesterday. Crash! While Wuxia was in a daze, the skeletal horse quickly dove into the depths of the sea. Chapter 1230, Dongting Lake. If the giant dragon mountain range resembled a beast entrenched in the sea, then Dongting Lake was a jewel in the beast's mouth. Even though she was not as kingdom-toppling as Zhuo Jincher's bunch, she had her own style and wore a tight bluish-green dress. It wrapped her body and revealed all the curves of her figure. Her towering soft breasts were plump enough to accentuate her slender waist. Such an outfit seemed like it was built for someone who often dives into the water. She had a little makeup on her face, making her even more charming. Her willowy brows carried both a touch of femininity and a hint of tenacity. Her spirited pair of round and large eyes were bright, giving off a sharp and determined sensation. Despite not being a kingdom-toppling beauty, her firm and resolute demeanor made her quite attractive. This was a woman with a straightforward style. Surname Hong? Wuxia raised his brows and looked at her. Yes, I am Hong Yujiao. May I ask for your name and where you are from? She cupped her fists decisively like a man would. This was a woman who wouldn't concede to men. In fact, claiming herself as a disciple was a very modest way to put it. The Hong clan had an exceedingly pivotal status at Dongting Lake. Their clan had always been a pillar of this location. Wuxia closed his eyes, showing his lack of interest. I am only a passerby. Where I'm from and what my name is are not important. She calmly replied, Sir, I hope you can understand that this is for the safety of the lake. We require everyone to register with us. Please be considerate. Chapter 1231, 100 Saints Hall, Dongting Lake now. After hearing this, Li Chia glanced at Hong Yujiao and shook his head disapprovingly. This once all-accommodating land of treasures has lost the model crafted by the old wise sages. It no longer has the same temperament in its attempt to vie for power. After hearing such words, Hong Yujiao's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't too clear on the meaning of his emotional statement. Li Chia dazedly stared at the barely visible islands scattered across the lake. He eventually calmed down and stared at her to speak with a dismissive tone. I am only here for a bit and will leave soon. Don't worry about me. She looked back at him and cupped her fists to say, if fellow Taoist will leave soon, then I won't bother you any longer. However, if you want to stay here for more than one day, I hope that you will cooperate with us by filing and receiving a label. If you have any questions, feel free to find me anytime. Li Chia only smiled and lied down on the sand to watch the blue sky and white clouds without a care for others. Hong Yujiao took another look at this ordinary and strange fella. Eventually, she refrained from commenting and let her people steer the ship away. Li Chia softly sighed again. Dongting Lake was indeed a nice place. In the past, several wise sages established this location as a starting point for the humans to have a strong backing in the heaven spirit world. These sages were very broad-minded. They were oceans that could shelter 100 streams. Because of this, the lake was once more powerful than the exquisite valley. Unfortunately, prosperity came and a desire for profits and gains arose. Not just anyone could be so magnanimous and altruistic like these sages. Their descendants didn't share the same attitude. When they eventually gained power, they couldn't escape the temptation of having even more. This lake used to be so wonderful. Li Chia was slightly disappointed. Alas, its descendants have fallen short. He dispelled these thoughts from his mind since he was enjoying a rare moment of peace. Time continued to pass like the quiet white clouds gently drifting in the sky, something that nobody would pay attention to. No one knows how long he had been lying on the sand for. Suddenly, his mind shifted after feeling a summons and immediately opened his eyes. In a split second, he leaped into the sky and rushed out of the lake. The giant Dragon Mountain Range was more than just a ring of mountains surrounding Dongting Lake. Many islets were right outside, and the majority of them already had owners. These islets scattered outside the lake were like thrown-out pearls. One of these islets in particular was quite large. Many old pavilions and buildings were built on it, though most had collapsed and were invaded by thickets of weeds. It was a desolate location. Only a few buildings at the very top of the island remained intact. These buildings were built around an ancient temple. The temple was very old. The whole structure seemed to have stemmed from one solid piece. The gray walls appeared to have been carved out of a single gigantic stone. An old plaque was hung above the old temple. It appeared to be made out of bronze yet wasn't bronze, iron but not iron, wood but not wood. Who knows what it was made from? The plaque had been through many years and looked like time had polished away all traces of what was written on this plaque. Nevertheless, one could still see 3 faintly visible words engraved on it, 100 Saints Hall. These words were etched with an archaic style, so only the knowledgeable would be able to recognize them. The 3 words had suffered the battering of time for too long, so they became quite blurred. One could almost see stars lingering around them, as if they contained a portion of a vast universe. If someone with good insight took an even more careful look, they would find something else. It looked like there was indeed a celestial system and a universe around them. Within this universe was a great army, an invincible cavalry that was stationed here. However, they were too tiny, especially for those with weaker vision. Everything was placed around these 3 words. There was also a figure. Upon careful examination, one would find a crow carved above these 3 words. When it spread its wings, the crow shielded the words as if it was granting them its protection. Bang! 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 At this time, sounds of violence could be heard. A young man holding a giant hammer was fiercely smashing the doors to the ancient temple. Alas, it didn't matter how hard he slammed down, he couldn't break open the doors even though they were made out of wood. An old man that looked nearly 50 shouted, "Stop!" He wore gray clothing and had distinct facial features, but his body was thin and feeble. One could see that he was a cultivator, but his blood energy was incredibly weak, indicating his shallow cultivation. The old man shouted to stop the young man, but before he could do anything, 5 other burly men stopped and immobilized him. Bang! The youth mercilessly smashed the door, but it still wouldn't open. He had a pair of hawk-like eyes while his back was covered with armored fish scales. The 5 men holding down the old men had the same scales. This was a big race in the heaven spirit world. The scales were the defining characteristic of the Iron Scale School, a fish tribe among the sea demons. They barely meet the qualifications to be considered a big race, with their nest being around 1,000 miles away from the giant Dragon Mountain range. The ideal nests for them were deep in trenches. The youth was the young lord of the Iron Scale School, Leyu. He wanted to establish a stronghold outside of his school and had chosen this island. Unfortunately, the only descendant of the 100 Saints Hall was this old man. He didn't want to sell the island, leading to this conflict. "Old geezer, didn't you say your hall was protected by the sacred sages of the 9 heavens and 10 earths? Where are they now?" Lei Yu looked at the captured old man and laughed boisterously. It was a pity that the old man's cultivation was too weak. He simply was not a match for the muscular men. He struggled but was pushed down again. Alas, he was unyielding and lifted up his head to declare, "I will not sell off the 100 Saints Hall even if it means my death. If you don't want to sell it, then I might as well smash it apart." Lei Yu turned cruel and glared at the ancient temple. Bang! 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 More explosions could be heard, but he still couldn't break open the temple no matter how hard he tried. He mustered all of his strength like a baby drinking its mother's milk, but it was all for naught. He became quite angry and decided to take it out on this old man by mercilessly stomping on him. "Old geezer, I have plenty of time. Today, I'll torture you to death and my school will take its time breaking down this place. Don't worry, I won't kill you quickly, not until I flatten this land. I want to see the despair in your eyes." With that, he unleashed a flurry of punches and kicks on the old man. The youth was livid. He originally wanted to break this temple down first before forcing the sale. However, he simply couldn't destroy this building at all. This only provoked his greed to possess this place. He believed that there was definitely an incredible treasure on this island, perhaps inside the temple. He became even more determined to occupy this island before others caught wind of it. The old man was quite stubborn. Despite vomiting blood from Lei Yu's barrage, he still kept his head high without letting out a single groan. "Old geezer, your bones are quite hard, yeah?" Lei Yu sneered and stomped on him again. A crisp crack made it apparent that a bone snapped. The old man finally grunted. He was clearly in deep pain, but he didn't let out a full scream. "Heh, geezer Zhang, no matter how hard your bones are, I can still kill you as easily as killing an ant. Beg for your saints to come and save you. Where are they now?" The old man still didn't utter a word and spent all of his energy on keeping his head high. His unyielding attitude only further enraged Lei Yu. Lei Yu stomped on the old man's face and sneered, "Ha ha ha, tell these saints protecting your temple to appear already so that I can see what these so-called saints of the 9 heavens and 10 earths look like. Is that so?" A chilling voice sounded at this time. "Do you really wish to see the saints of the 9 heavens and 10 earths?" Li Qie landed in front of the temple with a frigid demeanor and glared at Lei Yu's group. Chapter 1232, Zhang Baitu. Lei Yu and his robust followers couldn't contain their laughter after seeing an ordinary human like Li Qie. Lei Yu mocked, "Boy, what now? You want to stand up for your fellow race? But before doing that, you need to weigh yourself." Boom. But before he could finish his spiel, his 5 followers were rendered into pulp, their blood staining the stone slabs on the ground. These men didn't even know how or why they died. They couldn't even react before being crushed completely. Meanwhile, Lei Yu started seeing stars. Li Chia had one foot on his body, so he couldn't move at all. The previously captured old man was also frightened out of his mind. He stared at Li Chia in disbelief since he couldn't even see part of the process. His followers being annihilated as well as his lack of ability to retaliate while being trampled upon made Lei Yu's soul leave his body. Li Chia chillingly spoke, "No one is allowed to defile the 100 Saints' Hall." Lei Yu shouted, little boy, do you know who I am? I am the young lord of the Iron Scale School and my father is the schoolmaster. If you dare to hurt me, my father will not only kill you, he'll annihilate the entire hall as well. He was quite afraid, so he had to bring up his father. Crack. Bones were broken, causing him to scream. Li Chia had crushed his face with a stomp. Flesh and blood went flying as Lei Yu writhed in agony. Li Chia emotionlessly declared, I am sparing your dog life so that you can tell your father to personally cut off your head and bring it here as an apology. His failure in teaching you will also result in his decapitation as well. If he heeds my words, then I shall spare your Iron Scale School. Otherwise they will not see tomorrow's sun. With that, Li Chia lifted his foot from Lei Yu and kicked him off the island before saying, Scram. Lei Yu was kicked into the ocean and pissed his pants from fear. He immediately dived down and escaped out of sight. The old man was still in shock and couldn't stand up from the ground. Li Chia gently sighed while looking at the old man before helping him up. Li Chia asked, What is your name? The old man took a while before answering, My surname is Zhang. Everyone calls me Baitu. Having said that, he felt quite dejected despite his stubborn nature. However, his head was still held up high the entire time. Li Chia lamented while looking at him, why did the descendants of the Zhang clan fall to this level? The stubborn demeanor of the old man reminded him of someone. Li Chia threw a medicine bottle over to Zhang Baitu and said, You are badly hurt, so take this. Zhang Baitu accepted the bottle and poured a pill into his palm. His heart jumped after seeing the shining golden hue. He looked over at Li Chia in astonishment. Despite his lack of knowledge, he still knew that this piece of medicine was a big deal. Take it. Li Chia waved his sleeve as he didn't want to waste more words. After a short silence, the old man quietly took the medicine. Li Chia stood before the temple and looked at the old plaque that was hung up high, gazing at the crow engraved above the 3 words, 100 Saints Hall. He stood there, silently looking at this plaque for a long time. Eventually, he looked back at the old man and asked, Aren't clans like the Zhang and Hong responsible for taking turns to protect the hall? Zhang Baitu was surprised to see a human junior aware of this matter. He eventually replied, My ancestors accepted the responsibility of protecting this place. After hearing this, Li Chia nodded, I understand. Your ancestors lost the conflict for power at Dongting Lake back then and had to move out, correct? How do you know that? Zhang Baitu was surprised. Even the elite disciples of the lake didn't know about the power struggle of their ancestors. For power, even blood brothers can become enemies, let alone mere friends. Li Chia stated without answering the question. He sighed once more while looking at the plaque. Zhang Baitu eventually calmed down and bowed towards Li Chia, Young noble, how should I address you? Li Chia answered, Li Chia, just a passerby. He didn't have a big reaction after hearing this name and only nodded. He was only a little character and hadn't heard of Li Chia's name before. Squeak, Li Chia pushed open the wooden doors to the hall. Lei Yu used all of his strength to desperately smash open these doors to no avail, yet Li Chia opened them so easily. How can this be? The old man couldn't believe his own wide-open eyes. Why not? Li Chia turned back at him. Because these doors have never been opened by anyone. Zhang Baitu was stammering. In his memories, no one had been able to open these doors. His seniors and even many big shots from Dongting Lake all failed. According to the legends, the hall was protected by the wise saints of the world, their power safeguarded this hall. Li Chia didn't reply as he stepped inside. The astounded old man calmed down and quickly followed. He had to ask, "Young noble Li, are you one of the saints?" The unopened doors had been opened by Li Chia, so perhaps this was one of the legendary saints. Saint? Are you referring to the saints that protect the hall? Li Chia laughed and said, "If you believe so, then I can be considered one." With that, he went inside. This hall was very simple without any further decorations other than a stone pillar. Contrary to people's expectations, the end of the hall contained no treasures. There was only a line of memorial tablets with names engraved on them. Li Chia was caught in a long silence while looking at these all too familiar names. He began to bow in front of each one while feeling quite sentimental inside. This was Zhang Baitu's first time seeing these tablets and names. However, the majority of them had the surname Zhang, Hong, or Su. After a while, he quietly asked Li Chia, Are these the tablets of my ancestors?" "Yes." Li Chia softly nodded. "They are the wise sages of the human race, the pride of humanity. Even during the era of darkness, they continued to defend the dignity of our race and protected its final dawn." Zhang Baitu had no comments. He didn't know anything about his ancestors. Only he remained of the Zhang clan, and he rarely mingled with Dongting Lake. Unfortunately, the descendants did not inherit the ambition or beliefs of their ancestors. After so many generations of friendship, they still couldn't avoid the temptation of one thing, power. Li Chia bemoaned while looking at the tablets. The ancestors of the Zhang, Hong, and Su were friends for generations. Their clans all followed Li Chia, and they eventually settled down in this place, creating Dongting Lake. It was meant to be a shelter for the human race in the heaven spirit world. The lake was once a prominent power. In its heyday, even the exquisite valley was far from being comparable. Regrettably, the descendants of these friends betrayed each other later on. They fought for power to the point of life and death. Because of this, Li Chia didn't want to bother with the lake's unfilial mindset or power struggles. After a long time, he withdrew his gaze and glanced over at Zhang Baitu, flatly stating, "Even if your Zhang clan lost the fight back then, it shouldn't have deteriorated to this state." Zhang Baitu smiled wryly and responded, "I don't know much about the ancestors' business. I heard that after leaving the lake, they decided to stay here and act as guards. It is we descendants who were useless and failed to pass on our lineage. By the time my father's generation arrived, we were already finished. During my youth, my father and uncles departed one after another, unable to maintain the inheritance. In the end, I could only learn a few superficial things. In the past, the three clans ruled the lake together. Later on, the Zhang clan lost the internal conflict. Their ancestors were stubborn as well, so after losing, they moved out of the lake and settled here. Because their clan had lost a lot of resources, it was sent into a nosedive. Each generation became worse than the previous. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.